Hey there, internet friends. Welcome back to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. This week we're going to be talking all about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, continuing our run through all of the Spider-Man stuff on Disney Plus. So joining me once again, we've got our Spider Boys. We got Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
Doing good, doing good.
And Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on? Very muted. Hey, what's going on from Cameron? If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. We were talking about it beforehand. Next week, rather than kind of continuing on with Spider-Man Homecoming, in part because the other Spider-Mans of the MCU aren't there yet, we'll hold off on that until, presumably eventually they make their way to Disney Plus. So next week we're going to do Elemental, the latest Pixar movie.
Right.
And then following that, we will have Ahsoka as kind of a season wrap-up to kick off October. And then the rest of October will be Halloween, which is crept up on us. So we'll be doing stuff like Return to Halloween Town, probably the new Haunted Mansion movie, and then who knows, maybe like Goosebumps or something. But yeah, so stay tuned for the upcoming slate of That D Plus shows. But yeah, until then, we've got The Amazing Spider-Man 2, originally released May 2nd, 2014, almost a decade ago now. Other releases of the time, this was an interesting one because this very much felt like a summer that was kind of left alone, I guess, a little bit. Like there wasn't, it is weird being in an era where it isn't like every week is a big blockbuster movie kind of thing. So I had to go back a little while because, this came out in May. There wasn't a ton of note before that. But going back to March 7th, we had the Grand Budapest Hotel. So that's where we were on the Wes Anderson side of things. We had March 14th, the Need for Speed movie. Funny because now we have Gran Turismo out in theaters. Muppets Most Wanted was March 21st. That was like the second movie of the post-Muppets reboot with the Muppets. Captain America, The Winter Soldier is where we were on the MCU side of things, April 4th. And then we had Rio 2, April 11th.
Shout out to Rio 2.
But most of April was pretty much just left to be Captain America, The Winter Soldier. There was almost nothing else there. However, I did shout out and pull The Other Woman came out April 25th, and that was the movie that dethroned Captain America Winter Soldier as the top of the weekend box office. So yeah, but Captain America Winter Soldier basically had almost all of April to themselves. Other Woman with Kate Upton and I always forget her name. Judd Apatow's wife, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's about Leslie Mann?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. Good work, everybody. Then we would get Amazing Spider-Man 2 on May 2nd, which quickly snatched away the title from The Other Woman. But it only had the title for a week because Neighbors came out May 9th and topped the box office that second week. So Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't even get 2 weeks at the top of the box office. Then May 16th, we had Godzilla.
Is good.
May 23rd, X-Men Days of Future Past. May 30th, Maleficent. Then we got Edge of Tomorrow, a.k.a. Live, Die, Repeat on June 6th. 22 Jump Street and How to Train Your Dragon 2 were June 13th. And Transformers Age of Extinction there, June 27th. So I guess I take it back. We did have pretty much one a week in terms of big Hollywood kind of movies there, but it was a slow start. But again, I guess it always is kind of pre Memorial Day there. So, but yes, we had diving into the 2014 box office, which I don't believe we've done. I don't think this has been covered on any of our episodes. So this is a brand spanking new one. But 2014, the domestic gross for The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was only $202.9 million, down from the $262 million of The Amazing Spider-Man 1. So given some of the titles listed, as well as some of the other stuff that would have come out there in 2014, where do you guys think this one falls in our, top 10, top 20, whatever the case may be?
Ooh, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is probably like maybe 6.
Number 6? Okay.
Yeah.
You thought this one did. You think that this one did better than the last one comparatively?
It's also a weaker year than 2012, to be fair, which
Fair.
is like
Yeah.
a gangbuster one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, gosh, actually, you know
yeah,
what?
I mean,
Scratch
it's a
that. I'm gonna say 8. Sorry,
Number 8. Okay.
dropped it.
it's a super weird year. There's no Bond movie in 2014. Are we at Force Awakens timeline yet in 2014? Is that
Force Awakens would
20
be 2015.
Okay,
Yeah, it was
So that's
2015,
off the table.
2017, 2019 for the sequel trilogy.
so that's off the table. So I'm tempted to say what I said last time, which is 7th again.
7th. All right.
Yeah.
So some of the ones we that were in there that I just covered. How to Train Your Dragon 2 was number 16. Outside the top 10, 22 Jump Street was number 12. Number 11 was Godzilla there with 200 million. Amazing Spider-Man 2 right in there at number 10 with its 202.9 million. Ahead of that, Big Hero 6 was 204.5 million at number 9. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes,
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
208 million at number 8. X-Men Days of Future Past, which was covered there, came in at number 7. The merging of the X-Men timelines was kind of a big seller for them, so that shot up to 233.9 million. Maleficent, 241 million. The selling power of Disney and Angelina Jolie. Transformers Age of Extinction, domestically at number 5, 245 million. The Lego Movie, number 4,
Yeah.
257.7
Lego movie's
million.
great.
Captain America: The Winter Soldier here at number 3,
Number 3.
$259.7 million.
Are we in Age of Ultron?
Do you want to guess the next couple then, Cam? We got 2 left.
I'm not sure what number 2 is, but I'm pretty sure number 1 is like Neighbors.
No.
No.
You think an R-rated comedy shot all the way to number
No.
1? No, this is
No.
not the Hangover times. Neighbors was number 19.
Oh, well, all right.
150
I was
million.
thinking of all the movies you listed off, and I'm like, Neighbors.
Oh.
You didn't say Neighbors. Did Neighbors I remember Neighbors was big, at least.
It was for
But
an R-rated
granted,
comedy,
I was 23, 24 at the time, so
You were
Neighbors was
the specific target audience of Neighbors. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's totally fair that it was not in the top 10 at all.
You just saw it everywhere, but but you had no idea how it actually fared at the box office. The top 2 were not in the preceding list because they came out outside of the summer window.
Sneaky.
Number 2, The Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part
shit.
1,
Right.
313.2
That's
million.
the only Hunger Games movie I've seen.
The only one.
What?
That's the last
Yeah.
Hunger Games movie I've seen. I never watched Part 2 when it came out
Yeah.
because by that point I was sick of the splitting the final thing up into 2 parts needlessly.
I
Um,
didn't read or watch or I don't care about the Hunger Games. I don't now.
When the books came out,
But-
I was into them, but that's it.
Yeah, but that was one where basically just my friend group collectively at where I worked at the time just all went to go see it together and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll go. I enjoyed it. I
2
enjoyed
films
it nice.
preceding it, one after, and that's the only one you've seen.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Number 1, admittedly, I could
Not
have
Harry
included
Potter.
it in here, but I would have had to basically jump a month because this came out October 1st.
Is it Fast and Furious something?
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh shoot!
Oh,
The
Yeah.
surprise hit for the Marvel Cinematic
Yeah.
Universe that blew everyone away.
Yeah.
$332.9 million for
What did Winter Soldier do again?
Winter Soldier did 259. So
Wow, so it did a lot better too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, Winter Soldier was so much more of a adult flavored MCU film, and
Winter
Guardians of the
Soldier's
Galaxy
dope,
was
too.
it's bonkers that literally this is the guy that made trauma films throughout the 2000s that are just
That's
horrifically violent, like horrifically violent and awful, intentionally. And this man makes one of the most friendly family MCU films of all time. Is still bonkers to me.
Do you think Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the most family-friendly MCU movies of all? I don't know if I think it's one of the most family-friendly ones. I wouldn't go that far, I would say.
The number of kids who want to be Star-Lord or Drax or love Rocket, like Guardians of the Galaxy, my nieces and nephew John's kids have seen that. That's one of the films that they've seen, and they adore it. Like you're like, oh, it's not very family friendly. It's about a space orphan, found family, talking animal, walking talking tree, blue guy with the big hammer, and like name something about that's not like very family friendly.
Sure, but the flip side of
has
that
a big hammer. Oh, are you talking? You're talking Ronin, I guess.
Ronin, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought like
the flip side
blue
of that.
guy. I thought you were talking Drax.
No, Drax. Is
I think though, the flip side of that, I think though, is that like it's also probably the most like sexual as MCU movies get, and also like Star-Lord's one of the more crass of the like heroes of the like MCU bench.
Yeah,
right.
It's definitely a lot of like jokes that go over the kids' heads.
Yeah,
because like I'm immediately thinking of like, oh yeah, you should do not see this place with a black light. It looks like a Jackson Pollock painting.
Yeah,
which also a very wild reference for a kid who would have been 6 when he left Earth or whatever to make. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy #1 there domestically. So switching over to our worldwide box office.
Change the rankings.
It's amazing.
What did Amazing Spider-Man do domestic again?
Domestic, it did 202.9 million.
Oh, what was its ranking? I'm sorry.
Oh, it was number 10. It was
okay,
it was
number 10. Thank you.
The 10th domestic gross of the year. Worldwide had a gross of $708.9 million, so it did a little better, but that's still down from $757.9 million of the previous film. So yeah, where do you think with 708.9 it falls in our worldwide gross?
I'll say it'll move up a spot to 9.
Okay.
I'll keep it at 8 for this time.
Okay. So
I think
coming in
right.
at number 10, Interstellar.
Ooh.
Didn't even crack the top 10 domestically, but yeah, had a pretty good worldwide gross there.
British
681 million. Logan, you were correct. Number 9, Amazing Spider-Man 2, 708.9 million. Just ahead of that, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes with 710.
Movie's real good.
Movie's
real good.
The movie's so good.
And then slightly above that, 714 million, Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Also, wow, that dropped a lot. 3 to 7.
Yep, down to 7. Yep.
Captain America films usually don't do like super
don't do great overseas.
Yeah. Something about like also like it's like, don't get me wrong, like we all 3 of us love Winter Soldier, but it's
the best MCU movie.
It's not the most commercially viable MCU film.
MCU is great. Winter Soldier is great.
Number 6, X-Men: Days of Future Past with 746 million. Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 1 drops down to number 5, 755 million. Maleficent up to number 4 with 758 million. Guardians of the Galaxy drops to number 3 worldwide with 772 million.
Wow, that was so heavy domestic.
The Hobbit: Battle of the Five Armies. Which,
was that even in the top 10 domestic?
No.
Nope. Nor should have been.
Interesting, because now, God damn it, Box Office Mojo always weird on this. So on their domestic breakdown of 2014, Hobbit: Battle of Five Armies has a domestic gross of 189 million, and then their total gross is listed as 255 million. And then on their worldwide box office, it lists their domestic gross as 255 million, and then their worldwide gross as 956 million. So it might have been in the top 10, I guess.
Right, but it'd be low. It'd be like in the lower half.
Well, it also came out at the end of the year, right?
It doesn't count. It doesn't count. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that might be.
Hobbit's definitely like a December.
It may have been a 2013 holdow I guess. Let me double check.
On that end.
Is
that the last of the Hobbit movies?
Yeah, it was December of that year. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird total. Okay, yeah. So if I switch
number 1
setting there, that might have changed some things around in general, because like American Sniper's also on here, and that came out in December. So yeah, I think maybe I just needed to change a setting for the domestic box office, and if I do that, the domestic box office switches. Amazing Spider-Man drops out to number 12. Dawn of the Planet Apes number 11. Big Hero 6 number 10. X-Men Days of Future Past was 9. Maleficent number 8. Transformers Age of Extinction number 7. Hobbit Battle of Five Armies number 6. Lego Movie number 5. Captain America Winter Soldier number 4. Guardians of the Galaxy number 3 drops below Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, and American Sniper was actually the number 1 domestic box office of movies released in 2014. Yeah. That movie.
That's insane.
It released at the end of the year, and then basically had like January and February all to itself.
That's like the Bradley Cooper one. I'm thinking of the right movie, right?
Bradley Cooper, yeah.
Bradley Cooper, Clint Eastwood directed. It's based on a true story and stuff. The one thing I remember from it was like
on the quotes on the true story.
Oh yeah. The one thing I remember from it was the prop baby that they have in a scene that was very clearly like a fake, like plastic baby. I remember that making the rounds.
The highest grossing film of 2014 in North America.
I'm not surprised. Clint Eastwood's like an extremely competent director. Bradley Cooper is a very compelling star, and then on top of that,
highest grossing war film.
Like the debunking of American Sniper, like the book, had not yet like reached critical mass. I don't believe it wasn't until after the movie came out that Jesse Ventura's lawsuit, his libel lawsuit against the estate, went through. It was even after, so it was Chris Kyle was dead by then.
This is crazy. I'm just looking. We're gonna have a brief tangent on American Sniper now, but it is the adjusted for inflation, even the second highest grossing war film of all time, behind only Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah,
it's the fourth.
Like it was just overtaken. Like it was one of the top grossing biopics. Behind I think like Bohemian Rhapsody and now Oppenheimer.
Yep.
The fourth highest grossing R-rated film of all time, behind Passion of Christ, Deadpool, and Deadpool 2. Warner Brothers' fourth highest grossing film of all time. This is before Barbie, obviously, but Dark Knight Rises, Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Oh, so that's not adjusted for inflation, because Exorcist is their number 1 adjusted for inflation.
Right. And these are only the first one was adjusted for inflation. Yeah. And the 8th highest grossing Best Picture film nominee of all time.
It was.
Wow.
It was.
I mean, it's like all domestic, international is significantly.
It was very much the like targeted to the grandparents that watch the History Channel set, and they showed the hell up for it.
Like this is because that's crazy how domestic heavy it is when it talks about solo.
3 major points that a lot of films have. I dub it the American Sniper blueprint. Film.
Prop Baby does have its own section on the Wikipedia page. That came into your point.
There is it has to be like a quote unquote war hero. Like that's actually more of a like war criminal. 2, a book had to have come, like they've had to have written a book, and it was like later, and then that book then later turns out to be filled with falsehoods. And even says, hey, maybe this guy wasn't even a war criminal, even. Maybe he just, he was a sniper, but not even that successful. And then the third part is there is a redeeming moment where that character takes into consideration all the life that they've taken, and then finds their salvation through the gospel of Jesus Christ. And by doing the trifecta, those 3 things, you will have every single goddamn boomer show up for your film.
Yeah, it definitely much like what was the one this summer that had that kind of checks some of those boxes.
The Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom. Yeah, Sound of Freedom very much got the religious crowd kind of got behind it and rallied behind it and showed up too. So but anyway, back to 2014. The number 1 worldwide box office was after that detour being thrown by The Hobbit being there at number 2. Transformers Age of Extinction
money
was that big $1 billion movie that year. $1.1 billion.
Is Shia still in that movie, or now we're in Mark Wahlberg territory?
That is the Mark Wahlberg one. I believe it's the first Mark Wahlberg one. Which is,
did he stick around for another?
Yeah, he's in the
Dark Side of the Moon, right?
No.
Dark Side of the Moon was the second one.
No, Dark Side of the Moon is the third
one. Is it?
I
didn't think of that.
Dark of the Moon.
Dark of the Moon is the third one.
Oh yeah.
It's the last one with Shia LaBeouf. The fourth one is with Mark Wahlberg. That's Age of Extinction, and it is the one where the guy who's dating Mark Wahlberg's teenage daughter carries around.
I remember this as well.
Carries around the little
the Romeo and Juliet lock
Yeah.
card kind of thing.
Yeah,
This is why it's legal. Yeah.
and they bring it up way too much, and it never stops being creepy.
Yeah, it's the thing they put the most thought into in that movie.
Yeah. China fucking loves Transformers.
Yeah, Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen was the second, then Dark of the Moon, then Age of Extinction. So yeah, this is the fourth in there.
And then the next one also has Mark Wahlberg, and it's about Camelot.
Yeah, The Last Night.
The Last Night, yeah. Anthony Hopkins is the last night in that movie.
God, it feels like that, and that's it. And then we get into like Bumblebee, and then this year's Rise of the Beasts. But it definitely feels like there have been more Transformers.
Oh, right.
Transformers movies suck so much.
I think some of that is because I'm conflating, like, I'm just throwing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that Michael Bay produced, like, in that ballpark of, like, just bad robbing of my childhood. And I say that, like, I never even played with Transformers growing up. Anyway.
My brother had an Optimus Prime. It was pretty rad.
Transformers: Age of Extinction, yes, did make it. It only made $245 million domestically, but it made another $800 million worldwide.
Fun tie-in. Due to his exposure in going to China to promote the film, in a tie-in with an episode of Wahlburgers, Mark Wahlberg is trying to convince his brother, who owns the Wahlburgers chain, or like the restaurant, to open up a Wahlburgers and franchise it out in China.
Sure.
That is the most interesting thing that I can honestly say about Transformers Age of Extinction.
All right, there you go. All right, so yeah, Amazing Spider-Man at number 9 worldwide gross there.
That's right, we're talking
Runtime of 2 hours and 21 minutes. It's just
I forgot we were even talking about this point. We've been 20 minutes not talking about this movie. That's a sign of the movie.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking about as well. As eventually we're making it our way to this actual movie.
When the
as many detours away as possible.
Yeah.
When the box office is more interesting than the movie you're about to talk about.
Right,
in the Sony Spider-Man timeline of things, as we touched on last week, The Amazing Spider-Man had come out July 3rd, 2012. Here we would get The Amazing Spider-Man 2, May 2nd, 2014. And then we will basically leave this world behind, and Spider-Man will pop up in Civil War, but then his next standalone film will be Spider-Man Homecoming, July 7th, 2017. And then we're also going to get Into the Spider-Verse a year later, December 14th. So our roll call here, director continues to be Mark Webb for this one, as we touched on last week. Huge music video catalog of his early directing work. Then he would do 500 Days of Summer, The Amazing Spider-Man, and Spider-Man 2. And then he is directing the upcoming Snow White again, whenever the strikes end, I guess. Our writers here, we do have James Vanderbilt, who wrote on the last one, is the only holdover this time around. And he's still attached to the story. So I imagine this is one of those like writing guild things where like he probably did like a first pass at the story and then probably was like off the project after that, because he does not have a screenplay credit on this one. But as a refresher, he had done The Rundown, Amazing Spider-Man. He would also do White House Down, Independence Day Resurgence, murder mystery movies, and the last couple Scream movies. Our writers would be then taken over on the screenplay side of things with the duo of Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orsi in what was actually their final project working together, as I was finding out. But they got their start as a writing duo back on the Hercules and Xena shows for a number of episodes. Then they worked extensively on Alias. They wrote the Island, which is a movie that is near and dear to my heart. Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, I really love The Island.
Fan of that one.
It's just a good film.
Yeah, which I believe it is a Michael Bay film. I believe it's like the
you know what?
It's like his first big one.
Yeah, it's like
sorry, his first big one is Bad Boys.
Oh, Bad Boys good.
Bad Boys 2 was he looped in on the.
He is the man behind the Bad Boys franchise. Okay. It's why they look so good, and otherwise they're like mid.
Yeah. They would also write The Legend of Zorro, Mission Impossible
Ooh,
3.
also a good movie. Also good.
Then Transformers,
Well.
the Star Trek reboot,
Okay.
Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, Cowboys and Aliens, Fringe. They were co-creators of the show Fringe. And then Star Trek Into Darkness.
God bless Cowboys and Aliens. What a great, stupid premise. It was so good.
Which Jon Favreau finally got to do again with The Mandalorian.
Yep.
Basically, The Mandalorian is just what everything he wanted Cowboys and Aliens to be.
He got you at it.
Yes, they after Amazing Spider-Man 2, they were also working on, and they continued to work together on their TV shows, including Sleepy Hollow and Hawaii Five-0. And that's pretty much where Roberto Orsi's kind of journey ends. Alex Kurtzman has continued on. He wrote the much maligned and mocked 2017 Mummy movie, trying to kick off the Dark Universe. But then he more recently has been a co-creator and I believe showrunner probably of the newest slate of Star Trek shows: Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Jeff Pinker also joined them on the screenplay and story credits here. He'd also worked on a number of episodes of Alias, as well as Lost, as we touched on kind of the lostification of things in our last episode. He also worked on Fringe. And then after The Amazing Spider-Man 2, he would go on to write the screenplay for The Dark Tower, as well as the Jumanji films, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle and Jumanji The Next Level, and the billion-dollar making Venom for Sony. Our cast of characters, once again, as Spider-Man and Peter Parker, of course, Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone also returning as Gwen Stacy, Jamie Foxx, new to the crew here as Electro / Max Dillon, going back all the way to stuff like In Living Color, is where I first remember seeing him, certainly. But then he started really kind of making a name for himself in the movie space with stuff like Ray and Collateral and Dreamgirls. He's in 2012's Django Unchained, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 here. And then after this, he would go on to be in Baby Driver, which I liked way more before we all knew Kevin Spacey sucked so much.
Never saw it.
Robin Hood, the 2018 version where he plays basically like that movie's version of Little John. And then, of course, he would return to this role in Spider-Man No Way Home.
I gotta watch Robin Hood, the director's cut, because
I know. I was just kind of
Ridley
thinking.
Scott's films are always just kind of like.
This is a different Robin Hood.
Oh, this is not the Ridley Scott Robin Hood.
No.
This is we're talking about Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, this is.
This
was Jamie Foxx and Taron Egerton.
Yeah, never mind. I take it back.
Taron Egerton. I mean, Taron Egerton is fun in it as Robin Hood.
I believe that. I believe that.
And they're trying to do like a little bit more, like they still keep it medieval, but it's a little bit more like modern, grim, dark kind of Robin Hood. Like he's like as the Prince of Locksley or whatever. He starts the movie off basically going to a war in the Middle East where they have like Gatling gun powered crossbows, so like, and his whole platoon basically gets taken out by just ballista bullets people. Pretty much, like, yeah, they shoot it like a war movie kind of thing, but with adapted tech of the era. Anyway, yeah, it was very much like a movie pass movie for me. It was fine with that, but yeah, otherwise not great. Dane DeHaan here as the Green Goblin and Harry Osborn had made his kind of breakout in the film Chronicle a few years prior. He was also in a movie called Jack and Diane and Kill Your Darlings before The Amazing Spider-Man 2. After Amazing Spider-Man 2, one of his big opportunities came in Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets with Cara Delevingne, and it was basically like it was supposed to be like the new Fifth Element by Luc Besson kind of thing. It did not it did not resonate with people and bombed miserably.
I heard good things about it though.
It's probably like a visual feast. like
Who is
Fifth
he in
Element.
Oppenheimer?
But yeah, he was in Oppenheimer, and then he's also in the movie Dumb Money that just came out and is coming to like wide release, I think, this week.
Nice. I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to
The
Dumb Money.
GameStop movie, basically. The
Yeah.
the GameStop stock movie, Dumb Money.
It's got a pretty stellar cast. I'm excited.
Yeah. Colm Feore in here as Donald Mencken. One of those kind of quintessential character actors. Hey, I know that guy stuff. With credits going back to 1981, including from The West Wing. He was in the episode Galileo. I couldn't remember who he played in that episode, and I tried to look it up and everything. But anyway, he was in there. He's in the West Wing verse. He was also in the movies Chicago. He's in Chronicles of Riddick. He plays the King of the Frost Giants in Thor, so he's like covered under a whole bunch of makeup, so you probably don't know it's him. But yeah, he was in the first Thor movie. He was in the Borgias for a number of episodes. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 here. And then he has been in the Netflix series The Umbrella Academy as basically like the parent / trainer of like the adopted special enhanced individuals in that series. He runs the Umbrella Academy. Felicity Jones also in here as a new cast member, in here as Felicia. Also, I want to point out, I'm going through these in like the casting order of the film, and I point that out specifically to call out we haven't gotten to Sally Field yet.
Yeah.
But Felicity Jones in here as Felicia. Prior to this, she had been largely a UK actress, but she was in the Doctor Who episode The Unicorn and the Wasp. Which I believe,
That's true.
I believe we talked about back when we did Rogue One, a Star Wars story, as part of our Summer of Star Wars, because she's of course in that. She's also
Rogue One's good.
In The Theory of Everything, and she played Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I believe was nominated for an Academy Award for On the Basis of Sex.
She shouldn't have been. The movie's very mid, but she's good in it, I guess. The movie's very mid,
and everybody was praying that our RBG would hold on as long as she could.
To me, like, a biopic is a broad spectrum. You can get stuff like Lincoln, which is really, really great, and you can get stuff like American Sniper on the other spectrum, right? Sound of Freedom is probably worse than American Sniper, to be fair to American Sniper. I'm sure it's shot very well because Clint Eastwood's a good director.
Actually, now I'm looking it up to see what she was actually nominated for, because she also could have been like for The Theory,
like
of
a Golden Globe or something.
I know The Theory of Everything was like a okay.
Army.
So that's what she was nominated for, was The Theory of Everything, alongside because she played basically Stephen Hawking's wife in that. And what's his butt was
Eddie
Hawking. Eddie Redmayne, yes. So that's
Army
what
Hammer
she
is
was
her
nominated for,
husband.
not for On the Basis of Sex. Apologies.
On the Basis of Sex. It's another Army Hammer movie that sort of hard to watch.
is tinged by that, yeah. Up next, Paul Giamatti in here,
Also very low down.
not as Rhino, but as Alexei Sitsevich. They didn't bother giving him the Rhino name for that one, but he was definitely all over the marketing material for this one. But Paul Giamatti, of course.
I mean, he bookends the movie, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Of course, got his breakout in Private Parts, the Howard Stern film from the 90s. And then would go on to be in things like My Best Friend's Wedding, The Truman Show, Saving Private Ryan, Man on the Moon, Big Fat Liar, Sideways, Cinderella Man, the John Adams mini-series.
Incredible.
12 Years a Slave, Amazing Spider-Man 2 here. Billions, which he's been on for a number of years. And just because it checks pretty much the exact same box as this movie in terms of like, he's just showing up, collecting a paycheck, and doing a big, funny, broad, over-the-top accent, Jungle Cruise, where he does pretty much the exact same thing, but with an Italian accent in that movie instead of the Russian in this one. Now we get to Sally Field returning here as Aunt May, as well as Embeth Davidtz and Campbell Scott as Mary and Richard Parker. And then lastly, just a few little kind of cameo-y things. BJ Novak in here as Alistair Smythe, of course, from The Office and Inglourious Bastards. In there having like a couple scenes with with Max Dillon. Michael Massey is in here, now credited as Gustav Fiers, aka the Gentleman. He was another, character actor with credits going back to 1991, but his biggest things were the man in the shadows at the end, at the mid-credit sequence of the last movie. And then they just kind of kept him, and he plays that same character here in this one. He's basically the guy going through the Sinister Six shots at the end of the film. Adie Bryant was all over the marketing on this one because she plays the Statue of Liberty lady, who basically tells Spider-Man what a nice suit he has. Of course, she's of SNL fame, as well as the series Shrill and Human Resources. Chris Cooper in here as Norman Osborn, an uncredited role in the film. And I don't know if that was just like to hide that he's in the movie or whatever, but it's like he has a notable scene in the movie and a notable role in the Spider-Man universe. So it's weird that he's completely uncredited on this one. But of course, Chris Cooper, known from projects like American Beauty, Adaptation, the original, the first Muppets movie prior to Muppets Most Wanted. So
that's right,
the Muppets reboot with Jason Segel, where he's big bad guy who notably says maniacal laugh. Always great seeing him just be fun.
I forgot about that.
And then August Osage County, one of his more recent films, and then Dennis Leary also in an uncredited role, returning as the ghost of Captain Stacy in Peter's traumatized mind. As we touched on, from stuff like The Sandlot, A Bug's Life, and the Ice Age series, in addition to this. Stan Lee cameoed in here as, any guesses in what his official title is? I have put in here in large part just to like help me find it. He's in here as GG, and that stands for graduation guest.
That makes sense.
To its credit, potential continuity, since he is there at graduation. He could have just been the same librarian from the last movie. Still no all-out of bubblegum body count, though this movie did have a body count. Electro kills a lot
unlike
of
the
people
last one.
But yeah, all out of bubblegum did not have anything for it, so did not bother pulling it in here.
They got more important things to do, like body count in 60-year-old Bond movies. Come on, Trev.
I mean, it worked out for our podcast.
It was phenomenal for our podcast. Yeah.
Awards. It did have one win. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Oh yeah. So Emma Stone won a Kids' Choice Award for favorite movie actress for this one. Otherwise, it was like a whole bunch of nominations on the same suspects that we had like last time around. Teen Choice Awards. It was nominated for movie.
Choice
Andrew
movie
Garfield.
Lip Lock is one that I saw. Yeah.
Choice movie Lip Lock. Indeed, that was a thing it was nominated for. People's Choice Awards, it was nominated for the movie as action movie, and then the movie duo of Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. In addition to Emma Stone's win in Kids' Choice Awards, it was nominated for favorite movie. Andrew Garfield was nominated for favorite male action star, and then Jamie Foxx was nominated both for favorite villain and favorite movie actor. So apparently they had different categories for male action star and movie actor. And then Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone were also nominated for the MTV Best Kiss that year. Other trivia: Emma Stone personally wrote Gwen's graduation speech.
I love this speech. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie, I will say.
We get a glimpse of it at the beginning, and then obviously a recontextualized version of it at the end of the film, much like the Uncle Ben voicemail that we got in the last movie, basically doing the exact same. I already
forgot about that from a week ago. Right, yeah.
Shailene Woodley was famously cast as Mary Jane Watson on this film and even filmed scenes for it, but her role was ultimately cut because the filmmakers, to their credit,
this is
there
what
was
made me
already
laugh a
too many
second ago.
characters,
Yeah.
and they wanted to streamline the series. I think you can still see her like in the background of like a scene or two throughout the film. Felicity Jones' role was also significantly cut down due to time constraints. In an interview, Jones had stated that she would be an ally to Harry Osborn's Green Goblin character, and at one point even let slip that she was playing, quote, the Goblin's girlfriend. Though a small scene showing her alliance to Harry was in the final cut, scenes that implied there were romantic feelings between the two were cut from the film. And of course, she's also effectively, it's not like explicitly stated, but she's playing Felicia Hardy, who would go on to be like the Black Cat if they, did a continuation, I'm sure. And then we got some lengthy ones kind of talking about the fallout and behind the scenes stuff. On a press tour, Andrew Garfield opened up to his views on the cancellation and controversy of the series. When asked how he felt no longer being Spider-Man, he replied, "Well, nothing, because I was never Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's a fictional character. He's not real. You know, it's funny, to give you the vulnerable answer. I thought I was going to be Spider-Man, you know? I went into it going, ego shit came in. It's like, okay, here it is. I'm fucking Spider-Man. I fucking made it. All that shit. I didn't actually make it. I was never Spider-Man. I was the actor that I am, the person that I am, struggling with trying to match up with something that I'd elevated so high in my mind. Elevated beyond what I could attain, what I could achieve. And the great thing is, that's what Peter Parker was doing as well. Peter Parker created this symbol that he couldn't live up to. It was never enough. He never felt enough. And I never felt enough. And I wanted to, not to say that I needed to rescue those films, but I couldn't make them as deep and soulful and life-giving as I could ever dream. And I'm never going to be able to do that with any film. It was especially difficult in that situation because, well, just because. And it was especially important because that character has always meant so much to me." End quote. He also implied the movie's story became compromised due to studio interference and revealed that he consistently pushed on Sony to cross over Spider-Man with the MCU, which would eventually happen with his version of Spider-Man, of course, with No Way Home, but then with Sony's version of the character in general, starting with Civil War and then into the Homecoming series. And then additionally, the future of the Amazing Spider-Man franchise was widely reported to be incredibly confusing following this film's release. The build-up of the film, and indeed the few months after its release, it was confirmed that it would be followed by The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and a Sinister Six spin-off film, with Venom and an untitled female superheroine films in the work, as well as the Amazing Spider-Man 4 also confirmed to be in the works. However, in August, Sony announced that the Sinister Six would take the place of the Amazing Spider-Man 3 and that the third in the trilogy would be pushed back to an unspecified date in 2018. Then, during the hack into Sony's email, it was revealed with much media coverage, Sony had approached Marvel with a deal to share the rights of the franchise, which Marvel initially refused. During this period of time, it was also revealed that Sony wished to fire Andrew Garfield due to his speaking out on the production studio and refusal to meet with them for company events. After a lengthy silence, Sony and Marvel revealed on February 9th, 2015, that they would be working together to produce a new Spider-Man series set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the Amazing Spider-Man franchise was no more. Despite this, 7 years later, Andrew Garfield would, of course, reprise the role in No Way Home, for a supporting role alongside his predecessor, Tobey Maguire, returning as their versions of Spider-Man, where they teamed up with the new version of the character portrayed by Tom Holland during the events of the movie. And then the last little one here, just an absolutely dumb IMDb trivia thing. The bridge with the webbed message, "I love you," was constructed fully digitally due to the bridge being covered with a tarp on the day of filming.
You know what?
I put that in here because in my mind, the fantasy that happens there is somebody who's done all of this work building truckloads of webbing that they're going to put on, I don't know if it's the Brooklyn Bridge or the George Washington Bridge or one of the bridges in New York. Like, they show up to do all of this and to do all of it physically and practically, only to show up the day of filming and there's a tarp on the bridge, I guess. And so they're like, well, gotta do it digitally. Sorry, John.
Sorry, John.
It's just like seeing that bit of trivia. I'm like, of course it was done digitally. What are you talking? Whatever.
My only thought was like they're saying they had to like digitally like remove the tarp or something.
Yeah,
with the way that's phrased, I'm like, okay, so they had so there was a tarp there originally, so they had to digitally remove that, and then they put the "I love you."
I mean, I guess that could be. Sure, that could be a thing, but
I
feel like
I
feel like they were going to be doing something because for that bridge to have been such a pivotal thing, and obviously the "I love you." So in your mind, the initial thought was, oh, they wrote that "I love you" scene in there because they were shooting some stuff with that bridge in the background. They're like, oh, we got to turn this into something for the movie.
Oh no! I took it as like that was always like a scene that was planned, but then when they shot Emma Watson looking at
Emma
it,
Stone.
There's a tarp there. So
Emma Stone, not Emma
Watson. Oh, sorry about that. Emma Stone.
Yep.
I was trying really hard to not call her Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
But when my thought was like, oh, hey, what are we going to do about the fact that bridge over there has a tarp on it?
Mm.
And they're like, well, we were going to digitally do the "I love you" anyway, because like, why would like they're gonna do that from like logistically, I just don't understand how it makes sense. But then again, I have a lot of problems with this movie, and this is very minor on my list.
This is very much the like, okay, logistically, how did that work? And it's the same beat as like the Dark Knight Rises of like, okay, so you're telling me the Batman before when he showed up back to the city, the first thing he did was paint a big bat symbol on a bridge that he could light on fire. Okay, cool.
Absolutely, he did. Absolutely. That made 1,000% sense to me.
That dude's about to rage after being in a hole for
Yeah.
Anyway, so finally here, what do we think of the movie? I'll kick things off with a little bit of a thought first, because it's admittedly more a thought I meant to bring up in last week's episode and then just never did, and was thinking about it in the context of like, oh, I missed this extra like visual identity that the first movie had that I really liked. One thing I didn't mention last week that like I kept meaning to come back to and then it just kept slipping away from me. I really like the first person shots that you have in the last movie. The handful of like little like first person flying through the air, kind of seeing like, I mean, the video gamer in me loved that stuff and thought thought it was something that, did something to set it apart from the Sam Raimi stuff. So the fact that we don't get those shots really in this movie, I was like, it was a fun visual effect that they, played with a little bit the first time around and gave us like new flavors of a lot of the same kinds of beats we'd seen before. Cause we saw them in like the same kind of like, all right, I'm going to test my abilities. I'm going to do all that stuff. That is, in the Raimi stuff was like the Toby, woohoo kind of scenes and stuff. So the fact that we kind of cut away from those scenes and we just don't have that like first person occasionally dipping into that first person's perspective. Right. I was like, oh, I missed that in this movie.
I will say though,
I wonder if people complained about it, which is why like people.
I didn't care for it. Yeah. I didn't have anything truly against it, so I didn't really bring it up. It was just kind of like a visual thing that I wasn't a fan of, but it never felt intrusive enough that, like you said, it was really more isolated to those first person, like he's learning his power stuff, and like that was fine. I just didn't care for it.
Yeah.
But like I never felt it was like egregious. Although I am sad that it wasn't in this one because you were a fan of it. So
yeah. Anyway, that was just kind of a kickoff of the thoughts. If we want to go deeper into the thoughts, much like I kicked off my thoughts last week with the hide and seek game, I will immediately revisit that because I had completely forgotten how they retconned it in this one. And so now what we are expected to understand is Robert Parker, knowing he was fearing for his life, came home, told young Peter, hey, let's play a game of hide and seek. And then, obviously we only saw like him counting down from 5, but given the length of that video and the fact that before sitting down to do the video, don't forget, he had also set up like a fake version of himself hiding behind a curtain and stuff. So he definitely like had played part of this, but then he just abandons the game and goes to record this like deep confessional video that he's going to upload in the middle of this.
I'm just gonna say, put it out there. Robert Parker's a bad father.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
He's a bad father. He's a bad brother. He's like
bad dude.
He's a bad dude. They try to paint him as like, well, he was trying to prevent. It's like, no, he's just bad.
Yeah.
And he's also bad about staying alive. Oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about where they try to make him seem cool at the beginning of this movie, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. But yeah, like the retconning of that and just the like for how long it's going on. It's like you kicked this version of Spider-Man off with this scene effectively, like Peter's perspective of this scene. And so also like Peter was just supposed to just find him recording to a webcam. Oh yeah, that's the other thing, because also realize this is like a 2002 era webcam probably. So like it also took him another half hour just to get that set up. So This was the longest ass game of hide and seek ever that he was playing also, with young Peter.
You do the remote server transfer while you're on a plane.
Yeah.
With like like you're in the same city as your remote server. Why weren't you just doing that at home?
Yeah.
There's so many problems with this.
Just
oh
like,
my gosh.
It's very much like we talked about last week of like, okay, they set up a whole bunch of mysteries and the couple that they try and like pay off here are bad. Are just like the idea of like, I've keyed the spider DNA to my own DNA, so they can't do anything without me or my bloodline. It's like, okay.
And then you leave your son.
Yep, there's the thing tying this to like, oh, it's no longer just random that Peter Parker got bit by a radioactive spider. It is like he was destined because this would only work for him. And it is like, that's a bad like that's not what makes Peter an interesting character. It is that very much the lostification that Logan touched on last week of like just
it's really
the absurdity
bad here.
that they get into for some of the stuff there.
I'm also just gonna I'll just put it out there. Peter has a friend who's dying, who does not have the moral quandaries that would have caused his father to not. Also, his father, top of that being a bad father, massive dick, because he knows how Norman Osborn's gonna die. Like, it's bad. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't stop Norman Osborn from continuing to have himself experimented on, because we see his claw hands.
I mean, like, sure, he's bad but also Norman Osborn clearly not a good guy.
Not at all.
So I don't think Robert Parker is bad for knowing, how painful Norman Osborn's death is going to be. Like, I'm okay with him being like, fuck you, Norman Osborn.
Sure.
Right.
But I also will point out that, like,
as much as I love Chris Cooper.
Yeah. Well, Harry gets fucking shafted hard.
That's a whole other thing. Is like, okay, so Norman has been living with this and dealing and struggling with this for decades. And Harry shows back up into town, and within a week, he's completely fucked. It's like, wow, that elevated really quickly for a thing that you just discovered happened.
That he's just starting to show the physical signs of like a slightly shaking hand, and then it escalates to he's getting like the scales on his neck, and it's like, it's almost like you needed strong plot contrivance to explain why he's behaving more and more erratically because he's running out of time. But at no part, and then also Peter, the reason Doc Connors like went big lizard is, one, it was Doc Connors as the person making choices, and two, sorry, somebody somewhere is talking bad about me. But two, also, like, you also gave him a busted formula that you stole from your dad, then claimed you came up with it. He also, all you have to do is like give him some of your blood. They can run trials and tests and stuff. And congratulations, you have a new head of the company.
I mean, I at least will defend Peter in the regard of like, don't give him your blood, because those tests and trials will reveal who Spider-Man is.
I'm sure for that perspective too.
Yeah, so you don't want that to happen. Even if it is your best bud kind of thing.
Also, yeah, there's a lot about it. It's like Peter makes a lot of dumb choices in this movie that are only possible because the plot demands that he makes dumb choices.
Right.
And
that's fair.
This film overall is just the worst part is like, we talked about it last week where we talked about Amazing Spider-Man, how we're like, there's a lot of good bones here. There's a lot of good stuff here. This film has 2 Academy Award winning performers, 1 multiple Golden Globe winning performer, in Jamie Foxx, I'm gonna say it's Sally Reynolds, but that's completely wrong.
Sally Field, and Paul Giamatti. Like, you have incredible caliber of actors that you have to pull from that can put together a good film, and you fail. It's not like you were up against the clock this time around either. You had plenty of time to like workshop a really good, solid script, and you just didn't, because you were so obsessed with chasing this multiverse or this cinematic universe franchise that you spent more time thinking about the Sinister Six in a future film than you did about how poorly constructed the plot is in this movie. It's tragic. Hit us, Logan.
I think it's interesting because, I mean, obviously the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is most comparable to Spider-Man 3. Obviously, I think in terms of and for a million different reasons, but first and foremost, just in terms of like it being overstuffed with lots of stuff, and way too many characters and plot points and beats.
That's way too fucking long.
I think it's interesting because the Camerons, what Cameron was saying is, I largely agree with it. I think the bones here are better than in Spider-Man 3, which I think sort of really didn't understand who that character was at all, right? Like, especially as such a huge departure from Spider-Man 2, which I think, again, if you've talked about before, is my favorite Spider-Man story, even. I think is like a perfect representation of who Peter Parker Spider-Man is. Spider-Man 3 is not that. Here, I think they nail Peter pretty well, and nail Spider-Man pretty well. It's everything around him that doesn't work, right? And it is just so much. And so in some sense, it's almost more disappointing because the bones are there. But on the other hand, Spider-Man 3 at least had... You can almost do like a one-for-one comparison. Like, its Green Goblin is better, right? They had 3 movies to get to that point with Harry versus here he is, and he's just immediately Goblin, basically. And Sandman, I like if I think he's underserved. And then Trevor Grace's Venom is just kind of doing his own thing, but it's very comparable to Electro. I think Jamie Foxx's Electro is really, really woefully bad in this movie. I think it's like so, like, part of me thinks that in a vein that me and Trevor will appreciate, he knows exactly what kind of movie he's in, except for this is one of those times where he really misread it. He doesn't know what kind of movie he's in, but he's playing like he's in a Diamonds Are Forever and he's Mr. Wint and Mr. Kid. And it is not that kind of movie.
I think he thought like he filmed a different film than everyone else.
That's exactly right. It feels so out of left field compared to everything else. It's like every time he comes on screen, I'm like, where are we at again? Like, it's so tonally jarring. That it's most comparable to Spider-Man 3. Yeah,
I do think the initial part of their confrontation in Times Square is really okay. Good.
Yeah,
I like it because. One thing I will say, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man does extremely well in this film is give us, hey, last time we showed off him as Spider-Man, he was attacking dudes who looked like the guy that killed his uncle. This time around, he is... Harry Osborn has a throwaway line. He's like, yeah, he dresses up to go save cats and trees. And it's like, that's really who he's been. He's doing the neighborhood thing. He stops kids from being bullied, and then he walks that kid home. He doesn't just like swing away. He makes sure the kid stays safe walking home. He is out there saving cats from trees, basically. And I think that really works with...
He saves Max from, getting hit by a car.
Yeah,
kind of
and gives him... It sees, hey, this is a vulnerable guy who clearly is like in a rough spot at this moment. Let me try to like help, like, let me give him some words of confidence of like, you saved me. It's like, of course I saved you, Max. He goes, hey, it's like from your badge. It's all the great little things that Spider-Man does that makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. And I think it's done extremely well here. And in their initial confrontation, when he says, like, you don't remember me? And he says, no. And he goes, blueprints. Yeah, I saved your life. You had the blueprints.
You're my eyes and ears.
You're my eyes and ears. Yeah, he remembers the things he told him, even if he doesn't necessarily remember his name, because it's not about names, it's about the people that he's helping. And so it's like, yeah, he remembers that, even though he's now Electro and he's like glowing blue. And there's another, and it's great moments where basically, once again, I think I'm going to definitively say this, the Amazing Spider-Man's films prove that the NYPD is grossly incompetent in these films. I thought in Spider-Man 2, when they're shooting buildings that have people in them, trying to chase down... trying to chase people down, Doc Ock down, and just like firing indiscriminately into people's homes. I thought that was bad. This film definitively shows, whether it's the massive like 25 car pileup that happens in the intro of the film, with when Rhino is cause that massive pileup of like 25 cop cars. The fact that like they just escalate the entire situation. And Jamie Foxx, it's like the NYPD It's like they could tell. And it escalated it immediately to the nth degree, to the point where they put a sniper on it and just like, and told him, if you see him move, kill him. It's like, gosh, like it's, you said it, it's the movie around him that kind of fails. And without a doubt, it's like, yeah, no, because he's a good Spider-Man. He's talking down this guy who doesn't know what's going on. And he has the compassion from dealing with Dr. Connors of like, I just need to help this guy out. And then it goes sideways. And it's like, it's tough. But I love that initial like, hey, you know me, I know you, like, we can talk this out. We can help I can help you. And it's really like, that's a great representation of his Spider-Man, I think, in like crystallizes in this film.
I think the piggyback off that for me is this idea of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, right? That I think we talked a little bit about in Spider-Man 1 and 2. And I think you see really fleshed out here, right? Like all the little moments. I mean, like, again, how it bookends with like the little boy in the Spider-Man mask, the moments with Max, moments throughout. Like he feels more settled, and he feels like what you kind of want Spidey to be, which is like the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, right? And I think Toby and Andrew really excel in those small moments, right? Those moments, I think, of no giant explosions or stakes or anything like heightened like that. It's just like, yeah, I'm Spider-Man, right? Like, and I'm just here to like help a kid out or rescue a cat from a tree, like the joke says, right? And I think it is, a disservice to Tom Holland just by the nature of the stakes involved in his. That he never really got those moments in the same way. I think he is someone who also would have done well there, but this movie in particular, like really, they lean into that a lot. Some might say in a heavy-handed way with the little boy, but it largely works for me. It largely works for me.
I will say, I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man gets that, but he's also kind of like begrudgingly doing it because we're seeing him at like the second point of his arc.
I was gonna say, I think with all of the cinematic movie Spider-Man, we just don't get a lot in the way of like the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because that's not gonna make a compelling movie for like your widespread audience. You want to see Spider-Man doing battle with like the big crazy villains. But like, yeah, I do like that kind of the implication here is he hasn't really had like another lizard-like villain since the end of the last film. So he has, in between movies, he has just been like helping, your day-to-day robberies and helping like cats and trees and stuff like that. And I think in a movie we're only ever going to see that version of the character in like a montage because they need to get to like the big bad by the end of the film kind of thing.
That's all you necessarily need as well. I don't know if you need more than that in a 2-hour story, right?
It's the, like, I always see those like the snippets of like a Superman comic that kind of will occasionally make the rounds, where it's like a 2-page panel or whatever of Superman really helping out a kid or something like that, or the one from the CW version of Superman being like, hey, I like your hat, and the kid says, I like your suit, thanks, my mom made it. Like, we so very rarely get to see that version of the like down to earth version of these characters, because they in the movies they need to be so much larger than life. They need to be battling like something that is their equal. But I think when we get those moments, they do like resonate more because they remind us what's at the core of this character. And so I think in these movies in particular, we get those with the kid on the bridge in the last movie, him saving the kid. Is it the same kid? I wasn't paying that close attention. Is it the same kid that he like saves from the bullies at the beginning of the movie?
It is the same kid.
That kid. I thought you meant from the first one. Yeah.
Who goes out again and faces off against the Rhino, and like I as a chance to shake Spider-Man out of his slump, like I think it works as a final moment. I think it's drastically diminished in its impact by Rhino
I was gonna
shouting
say,
over the
let's see if we
top
agree on
Russian
this.
accent and
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
destroying cars with ballista and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like I think that like is too comedic and cartoony.
I would have
against
yeah,
this
much
like very nice,
rather-
heartfelt. Hey, thanks for
Yeah.
holding down the fort for me, Spider-Man. I'll take it from here, kind of beat.
Mhm.
But like even that moment is a great moment for Garfield.
Yeah.
And where I think he does excel, and and we get to see his love of that character and you know the pedestal that he has put Spider-Man on. He is just trying to be that, and obviously the movie says like he hasn't been Spider-Man for 5 months. He's basically, you know, he's been grieving for 5 months following Gwen's death,
which is why the graduation speech works for me in the build up to that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah,
Kind
exactly.
of get the payoff.
It's the combination. It's Gwen giving him permission to move on through that graduation speech, combined with this kid recklessly and stupidly, you know, running out from a police barricade to his own, you know, imminent demise.
Yeah.
And yeah, the inept cops basically doing nothing to stop him.
Yeah.
It
is. Yeah. It's the personification of, you know, of Gwen's kind of line of like, be hope, right? And like I think him leaning into that in a way he hasn't yet in his arc, right? And then kind of being able to see kind of very immediately be able to see the like impact kind of he's had on others by like the kid doing dumb kid stuff. It's a nice moment. Like, again, is it very heavy-handed with the kid? Yes. Is it, I mean, would I rather it been something like the kid is sent up to like bullies in school and not the Rhino? Yes, definitely.
the new Sinister Six mechanized Rhino.
Yeah.
But I will take what I can get in this movie, and so I'm going to take it and really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I can, on that point, I just want to point out a couple of things. Number one being, I fucking loathe the Rhino in this movie.
I mean, yeah, he's not a good character. He's very like,
Paul Giamatti is a high caliber,
so talented,
actor,
yeah,
and him being put into this absolute dog shit role, that bookends this movie. Like, fuck off. It's so fucked.
So trivia that I didn't pull, but I figured it would come up just naturally in the conversation. Paul Giamatti loved the Russian accent he used for Alexei Sitkovich.
I knew it.
I'm sure
I knew he would.
Quote, he's a Russian mobster. Russians are always good villains. My accent is pretty hammy. It seemed to me like an opportunity to be as over-the-top hammy as possible. It was really fun. So him and Jamie Foxx are in the same movie.
Yes. Oh, I will 100% agree with that. They're 100% in the same movie. I don't know
just
where
no one
everyone
else
else was or where they were when everyone else was shooting their part of the movies. But these two really, like, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the Spider-Man banter at the window of the introduction and everything. I'm a fan of that. That's fine. Everything else is just the biggest bunch of dog shit. And I hate it. I hate it so goddamn much. I was like, man, I'm really not feeling this movie at the end of it. I'm like, I'm just really not feeling it. And then that end scene happens, and I'm like, what an absolute pile of shit.
That's like the stinger at the end.
Like, how dare you? Like, just end it with we're gonna give the Rhino a suit. And it would stop on the rest of them are kind of like pseudo what you'd expect. And then it's just a giant mech Rhino suit. It's just a giant mechanized Rhino suit.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
I mean, that's what like all of the tech is, just like mech versions of these things.
Yeah.
I remember so much specifically like the final shot of like Spider-Man like swinging a sewer sewer lid into what was like in every trailer. Like, so for that to have like walk away from that movie and just be like, oh, they just literally like showed the very last image of the movie in the trailer. It was hilarious to me for absolutely stupid reasons.
It always reminded me like the super great thing of like that's like a shot that I would expect in like Ninja Turtles, like such a heavy emphasis on like a super great like that is always like, it's weird that it's in a Spider-Man scene too.
I mean, it's let's go full New York.
Hey, Spidey.
Yeah.
We didn't have any cranes to move, so we had to get it in somehow.
Exactly. Yeah. No over the top crane stuff in this one. Yeah, I like, it's absolutely stupid. But because it's so absolutely stupid, the Rhino stuff is like fine for me.
I think Electro is worse than the Rhino. I agree.
The other thing I'm going to say though, in this vein, is we got to the end of like the Electro stuff, and I had completely forgotten we still had the Green Goblin stuff coming and the Rhino stuff coming back, and that just speaks to how overstuffed this is. It's like, like I remember, like we're getting to we're doing the dubstep Itsy Bitsy Spider, and also I'll use this opportunity to announce one of my great guilty pleasure shames is I love dubstep. I don't love any music enough to really go out of my way for it, but like whenever Skrillex would come on the radio, like the drummer in me that just loves like rhythmic pounding and stuff like that, it works for me. So like all of the dubstep in this, as fucking stupid as it is, including Itsy Bitsy Spider dubstep, I'm still sitting there just like, hell yeah, this sounds cool to my ear. Incredibly stupid in the context of the movie, but I'm still having a good time. But yeah, like all that Electro stuff ends, and I'm like, oh right, like Harry, who's been out of the movie for like the last half hour of stuff, is going to be coming back, and oh yep, there he is, and we're gonna get this whole thing and the dramatic, fall of Gwen Stacy kind of beat. And then like, oh yep, that's all sad, and then it's very much the like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. There are so many different endings to this movie because it just keeps ending again and again after each like, battle and stuff like that. But yeah, I like it's so weirdly paced, and obviously we're nowhere near alone in making the comparisons to Spider-Man 3 and the overstuffed and the multiple villains and stuff, but it is like, oh yeah, that's when you really start to feel it's overstuffed, because it's not that these villains teamed up to face off against Spidey at the end like the original Spider-Man. It's these villains are being masterminded by Harry, supposedly. I mean, yeah, that's basically what's happening. But it is a gauntlet at the end of the movie instead of like all three fighting off against him at once kind of thing, which drastically impacts the amount of time we're going to spend having those final villain fights in a way that is like so wild, especially between between Spider-Man 3, this, and Far From Home, which even more stuffed with villains, but they at least like figure out, okay, here's the amount of time we need to spend on each of these villains. Like here's the appropriate ratio, and like, because Spider-Man No Way Home, a longer movie than this one, but I think we will all agree is a better better handling of not only multiple villains but not multiple Spider-Man. It's obviously tying in so many things together, and they managed to deftly do that, and throw in a Doctor Strange for good measure kind of thing. Far better than this film, which was very much like, oh, we're looking at Avengers money now. We're a couple years on. Here's how we can create our own cinematic universe. We're gonna do it with the Sinister Six. We're not gonna learn any kinds of lessons from Spider-Man 3. We're going to just do that all over again, but a movie sooner this time, and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I guess what are everybody's thoughts on the Peter and Gwen-ness of this movie? Obviously, like we ended the last movie, they've gone their separate ways because of Peter's promise, and that's basically immediately undone by this movie, but they also still then have to go their separate ways.
I think that I like that it's realistic, because at the end of the day, they were high school kids, right? And it's like, yeah, I made a promise to your dad, and you're telling me, yeah, but I get to make my own choices and I choose you. But there are repercussions to that, which is, yeah, you make that choice, but I made a choice to make a promise to your dying father, and that's still going to haunt me. And it comes to a head when you're at a crossroads like high school graduation, where what what choices are we going to make going forward? And the reveal where Gwen has a moment where she says, do you follow me? And he's kind of like, I'm trying not to be a creep, but yeah. And it's, instead of being like doing the typical, like, I can't believe you follow me. Like, that's so, she just goes, like, yeah, okay. Like, I get it. I understand why. Like, because we didn't end things with like, also, I wanted to point out, her line, it's not, I'm breaking up with you. I choose break up with you. That's like the line that she uses when she breaks up with him in front of the dim sum restaurant. Or it's like, I break up. I break up with you. I break up with you. And then she repeats it like 2 or 3 times, and it's weird.
Well, it's her trying to take power in that moment.
I get it.
Because he's very much doing the I can't do this again, which they've already been through clearly a couple times.
Yeah.
That we've already seen, plus, some times that have probably happened off screen. So it's her saying like, no, you're not doing this to me again. I break up with you. That's how this story is ending. I break up with you.
Yeah. And there's just something about it where it's like, yeah, no, obviously we want to be together, but there's like there's literally a phantom that is hanging over this relationship. And they make a resolution about it of like, yeah, no, what let's both make the decision to be in this relationship together. And I think it works well. Gwen has also the Times Square scene comes up. I want to point out, instead of trying to murder, very clearly like something wrong with this guy in a hoodie in the middle of Times Square, cops should have been like evacuating. Because there's a dude with like electricity powers. You should be evacuating civilians. And the fact that they all circled around like it was a goddamn like WWE arena match has problems with it. But
Royal
also,
Rumble.
Gwen, you have a bad habit of just being there,
running towards danger,
which like respectable, but also this is what your dad was talking about, Gwen. This is what your dad was talking about. And you know what? A broken clock is right twice a day, and so is a police captain of the NYPD.
I mean, I think like that I think speaks to like her character, the relationship of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. Like she's like, I mean, the fact that like at the end she's very adamant, like, no, I'm coming with you. I know the specs. Like there was a quote out there in the trivia that was basically like Emma Stone was very much like Gwen is like the brains and Peter's the muscle kind of thing.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to point out as well that oh shoot, nope, slipped mind. Never mind.
When asked about Gwen's relationship to Peter, Emma Stone told Total Film that, quote, she saves him more than he saves her. She's incredibly helpful to Spider-Man. He's the muscle, she's the brains. So like she's very much, I mean, we saw it at the end of the last movie, like she's the reason that like, people were saved from being the Lizard because she made sure that the antidote got to him. And that's very much like what she's trying to do here. She definitely has a little bit of like knows too many things too easily in terms of like I've seen the specs of the electric grid, so I know how to restart the whole system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's just hand waving.
Don't worry about it.
It's whatever.
Yeah.
To get her there, but like I love that. He tries to protect her. He tries to keep her out of harm's way. Like, okay, go ahead and shut that thing, and then he webs her hand to the hood. We get that great moment of like Peter, which trivia said somewhere that was an outtake, a mistake. She was supposed to say Spider-Man, but says Peter. I don't buy that. I feel like that reaction only works if she's saying his real identity.
Also as a point, she rarely ever calls him Spider-Man.
Right, yeah. But doing that in public there, she at least knows, I don't want to give away my boyfriend's secret identity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very much, and it was very much like in the moment, even before, I mean, all of the rumors were very much like, they're doing the death of Gwen Stacy in this. Like, in trailers, there are moments where she's wearing like pretty much identical clothing from the iconic, scenes and stuff like that.
Like the way they handle it. I like the way that it's handled in that scene where, for people who may not know, in the comic books, he webs her ankle, and the shock of the pull from it, like it's always been very hammy, like very ham-fisted in the way that they said she died. That like by grabbing her ankle, it's a sudden stop, but her head kept going, and so it broke her neck.
Right.
The way they do it this time, where his web just wasn't like he's
not fast enough.
He's not fast enough.
He gets her, but like you still see her head
like
slam against the back.
Well, it's her
right,
entire her body just like has that quick impact and is just yanked back up, but it's just too late.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And it's an impactful
slow,
thud when it happens too. Like it's visceral. It's like oh, she's fucking dead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great.
Yeah, there were other according to again the trivia stuff, there were like other versions of the scene where where Harry was still doing like Harry was much more active and like slashes the web to let her fall and stuff like that. Or is like taunting Peter after the fact and stuff like that.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that they kind of like dismiss him and then just like the clock and things were already set into motion in a way that is going to lead to her death still happens. Is still traumatic, obviously. It is one I'm sad to see that we didn't get an Amazing Spider-Man 3 in terms of I thought it would have been a very interesting third movie to see how Spider-Man deals with and wrestles with that.
Agreed.
In what they would do. But at the same time, I've also, Sony has also shown me that I can't necessarily like trust them to follow up on an interesting thread like that, because I walked out of Spider-Man Far From Home thinking, oh, it's going to be really interesting now that we have a Spider-Man that like his identity is known to the world. And then like the whole third movie is just like washing that away and being like, all right, we're going to undo that.
I mean, Spider-Man 3 did the same thing with Spider-Man's 2 plots in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, we're going to do our own thing. Actually, I can ignore that.
Yeah. So
third movies, they kind of do their own thing.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any other favorite moments, least favorite moments we want to touch on before we wrap up?
Oh, I went off on my least favorite moments. So
yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would say is touching on Gwen and Peter and like the whole death sequence is, I think it is in a movie that is very messy. We'll say will be nice. It going back to Cameron's point of like the bones are good, like those moments where I'm like, I wish so much more around this was as good as this, right? I don't think this movie hits the emotional highs of either No Way Home or Spider-Man 2, but I think that moment is done really well. I think Andrew Garfield is a phenomenal actor, and I think he performs it really well, and just kind of his portrayal of like grief kind of through that scene in the aftermath I really like. I even like, I know a lot of Spider-Man fans don't, little like the fact that like the web like becomes like a little hand to like I thought that's a nice touch, and I think like just the way that like time is kind of shown and displayed, and the how like quick it is, just like that she hits and bounces back, and
then the clock face just like does do like literal like quick winding kind of thing.
Like I think that moment is handled really well, and again, my favorite moment of the movie is the graduation speech video, like that, and like the beginning of it at the start of the film. I just think that there's so much around it that I don't care for it. I mean, like we talked a lot about Electro, and we talked a lot about Rhino. I think Harry just is another one who just really falls flat for me.
Which is sad, because I think it's a great characterization. It just is not ever fleshed out properly.
Yeah, I mean, he always had kind of the deck stacked against him because he's coming into it and immediately has to be Green Goblin, whereas obviously James Franco had 3 movies, and you had 3 movies to build that like relationship, to build that arc, to build that dynamic, to build this kind of confrontation. And so in a lot of ways it was kind of unfair to begin with, but even within his own movie, he doesn't really get the movie, right? He's one of three. Like Trevor said, he's gone for like half an hour at a time here. And then I don't know if I actually agree if I love his characterization of Green
I
Goblin.
just thought not as Green Goblin. I think his Green Goblin.
I think
terrible. I think having a Harry that is not so, that is a lot more like dealing with something a lot more heavy.
Yeah, I think that is interesting.
I think the Harry Osborn representation I think is pretty good, and I would have liked to have seen more of that fleshed out over the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
But his Green Goblin Goblinification is bad.
All of his stuff with like the Oscorp board is basically just the Batman Begins stuff.
Yeah,
I had the same thought,
but with a board chair that like outmaneuvers him in Colmfjord's Mencken character, who's basically like, I've been running this shit. I can do this better than you, kid. And so like, he basically like frames him and gets him ousted. And the only reason Harry ends up like coming through is because he finds Electro and gets him to basically be his muscle there.
I do think it's interesting just from a...
sorry, real quick, just to jump on. I do love the like the tactic of Electro killing Mencken and then like vaulting him back to life to be like, all right, so now are you going to give us what we want? Cool. Like that's a incredibly like
clever,
fun use of the Electro like skill set to be like, all right, yeah, this is a threat. Like this guy, I mean, like we immediately get him introduced to like, oh, he just like zapped a hole through the nameless Heavy's body, and that guy's just dead now. And so now he's going to kill the other guy, but in a way that he can bring him back. Is like, oh yeah, that's just fucked up. All right, sorry, Logan, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I do think it's interesting that in the context of like a larger, series, if they did more of, killing off Spider-Man's biggest enemy in like his 5 minutes of screen time, right? Like Norman Osborn's dead in this movie. I mean, like they could have found a way, I'm sure, to like bring him back, right? But Palpatine returns. But I think it's interesting that they went the route of like not him being sick and then leaving to go to like Cuba for like therapeutic medicine, or but like just straight up being like, he's dead.
Yeah,
you're dead, and like that.
He still dies
that is
off
interesting.
Screen.
Yeah.
So I remember like the rumors,
which is why like
the rumors were always like, no, he'll be back, kind of thing.
Right, but like it is interesting that like that's just how they're like, yeah, we're gonna not do that. Would have been interesting to see. I mean, they would have had enough villains with the Sinister Six for a while, but I would definitely have been curious. I mean, so much of Amazing Spider-Man 2, and this is more, I guess, more of just like my final wrap up of the movie is just like what could have been. Like it is such a what could have been, both in terms of like the individual sense of like the movie, but also in the larger like macro sense of like what this series and universe of movies could have been if they had done more. Because I think all of us really like Andrew Garfield, both as an actor, obviously, and also in this role. I think he is the actor who most looks like what I would picture Peter Parker to look like in my head. Just kind of his long, like skinny appearance, like the like shock of hair, in a way that like Tom Holland doesn't, in a way that Tobey Maguire doesn't. As much as I love Tobey Maguire, like Andrew Garfield looks like Peter Parker, and if a little bit too cool, still Peter Parker. And so like I would have loved to see him really grow in this role, especially dealing with like post Gwen Stacy, what that would have looked like. I
mean, yeah, like,
and so much of it is just such a shame that we don't get any sort of resolution or into this. It's just so abrupt.
For me, it is like imagine what a world would look like in the multiverse of worlds. What it looks like when they didn't make a Tom Holland version of Spider-Man, but they still made a deal with Marvel, and this version post the death of Gwen Stacy is dealing with his grief when he shows up in Civil War to fight alongside, and then like we continue to explore that. That'd be a fascinating other verse kind of story. What was I gonna going back to just like some of the Green Goblin stuff. Yeah, the fact that they like hand wave like, oh, you're looking much better now when he's, just incarcerated or whatever. And also still, he's clearly gone through stuff. He's, murdered Gwen Stacy, but he still has like access to his henchmen who can go and like, I'm gonna need to keep a small, basically maybe 6. They go, it's the like, oh, so we're a Suicide Squad kind of thing, or it's the Iron Man like, next time, baby, when we see like the guy walking through and we see the, Doc Ock arms, we see the vulture wings, we see the rhino suit.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you learn nothing from Spider-Man 3 and
or this movie, and they're gonna triple down on it now, exactly. Right? Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, it's weird though, because it's still, I mean, like when I do like they made $700 million worldwide, so that's definitely a profit. They made money on Spider-Man. Spider-Man still makes money for them. It is fascinating that they couldn't get their ducks in a row to continue that, but they'll go out and make a Morbius movie, or they'll go out and make a Kraven the Hunter movie and be like
a Venom 2.
Yeah. I mean, well, Venom made $1 billion, so they were banking on that for Venom 2. But yeah, it's just wild that they're so beholden to that IP that they're never going to give it up if they can avoid it. And they're just doing whatever they can to see if they can make money outside of having a Spider-Man in the movie. And it's like, no, we show up for Spider-Man. We show up for that character. And Venom sometimes, or at least the international audience shows up for Venom. But yeah, it's so weird.
To be fair, we all know somebody who saw Venom 6 times in theaters.
Who saw Venom 6 times?
Chloe? Was it Chloe?
Chloe.
Seems like Chloe.
Chloe saw it like 6 times
makes
in
sense.
theaters.
That makes sense, actually. The minute you said that, yeah.
Like, part of me wonders, like, did she really, or is that just the meme that she's playing into? But yeah. Anyway, yeah, I remember, again, if you asked me like, a year ago or something like that, I would have been like, oh, I probably really like the Amazing Spider-Man movies more than the Tobey Maguire ones. And this very much tested that. I'm like, I still like Andrew Garfield more than I like Tobey Maguire, as we've touched on. But yeah, the movies around Andrew Garfield are just such a mess of like place setting that's never going to pay off, and mystery boxes that are never going to pay off.
The lostification, everything.
And yeah, I just don't have patience for that, knowing like in the moment I was probably like, all right, like, sure, everybody's doing these, everybody's committed to these, fine, let's see what Amazing Spider-Man 3 has, let's see what Sinister 6 has. Guardians of the Galaxy surprised us all, so what the hell do we know, kind of thing. And then obviously time would prove that a fallacy. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they continue to go from here, because inevitably we're going to get a new live action Spider-Man. It's just a matter of when and what that's going to look like. And hey, maybe they will do, like, they'll go with a live action Miles Morales for a little bit, since he's been so ingratiated in the mainstream. Or maybe we'll get a Gwen Stacy movie, since people really like that character because of Spider-Verse.
One thing I'd be curious about is, this is a 2-part question that it's connected to the movie, I guess, in a sense. For both of you, would you want them to do an Amazing Spider-Man 3 just like as a standalone thing?
No.
And do you think they would?
I remember thinking about this coming out of No Way Home, that I thought it would be amazing if they did a Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire, an Amazing Spider-Man 3 with Andrew Garfield, and then like a Spider-Man, Home is Where the Heart Is for Tom Holland as like the next trilogy of Spider-Man movies. I thought, I stand by. I think that would be really cool. In the same way that I think, and again for you, Logan, I think the next Bond movie we're on the same page. As a one-off for Bond, like where it's just okay, we're in the same way that like Doctor Who right now is doing, like David Tennant is kind of like coming in as an interim thing between Jodie Whittaker and I will absolutely butcher his name in Goody, the next Doctor. Like I think having Daniel Craig was so iconic that having like a Bond come in for one movie just as like a standalone story would be really cool. And then you tell, then you sign a new young actor for a new series of Bond stuff. I think coming out of No Way Home, everybody really liked that glimpse of where these characters have gone. And so, yeah, I think seeing Tobey Maguire with, MJ trying to make it work, maybe they have their own little Mayday like Peter B. Parker from Spider-Verse has, and maybe he's, dealing with being a father and being Spider-Man or something like that, or just being Spider-Man in his 40s or whatever that looks like.
I think that would be,
I think that's an interesting story. And I think I'm always going to love Andrew Garfield. So I think like him getting to, like, we saw a glimpse of like, he went to a dark place in between movies that we never saw. And we don't need to see that necessarily. Now we can see him kind of coming out of that, and maybe he finds his own MJ or something, or maybe he finds another Gwen in the multiverse or something like that, and they bring Emma Stone back, and then he just has to struggle with that and like keep her at arm's length because he doesn't want it to happen again. Maybe something like that is what happens. And I think that could be, I think there's incredible potential there. Again, Sony, much more missed than hit for me in being able to execute on that. I think Far From Home or No Way Home is like the anomaly of like, there's no way this should have worked, but it worked. They did everything right. They had like the right hands at the wheel. They made it work in the right way. I don't know how well they could strike lightning twice on that. So I would like to see it, even just to see like what he brings to that character now that, now 10 years later kind of thing. And the lessons he's learned from the pain of kind of having that character losing it and maybe coming back to it. So I'd love to see it. And I think it's entirely in the cards that they could do it. I don't know if they actually will.
That all sounds awesome. Like, that all sounds awesome. I'd love to see all of that. But the problem is that I don't trust them to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they have the track record to prove to me that they would not fuck it up to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Unless
they'd bring 7 villains back in each of those movies and try and make it all work.
Unless there is somebody like, I just want to know what those, like, there were probably emails. But if they were meetings that Kevin Feige had to be in, where the Sony people were pitching, like, well, we should do this and this and this, and just have him look them in the eyes and say no, each and every time they brought up a dumb idea. Because we know that they had those dumb ideas, because we're getting a motherfucking Kraven the Hunter movie. We had Morbius. They re-released Morbius out in theaters because they're like, it's Morbin time, everyone. It's just, and we've had 2 Venom films. Like, folks, I wish, Trevor, I wish that we could be like, yeah, that's definitely going to be good and happening. It's not. It won't be good. I would love to see these concepts played out. I just don't trust that it would be played out any way that would be either interesting or not somehow fucked to hell.
I think it would be... I agree with Trevor. I mean, I think the Toby one to me is really interesting just because we never have really seen a 40-something Spider-Man, right? Like, that's such an interesting interpretation of that character. Like, what does he look like that old? And like him and Mary Jane making it work. And yeah, maybe they have, a kid or two. And him, looking like a youth pastor kind of thing. So like, I think that'd be super interesting, and I would love to see that interpretation because I think Toby, has kind of the proper amount of like gravitas to kind of do that kind of more grizzled, weary Spider-Man, because he's the one who's kind of he's in a lot of ways the Spider-Man who's kind of been through the most shit over his 3 movies, and so like I would love to see what balance he struck over the 15 plus years now. And then in Andrew Garfield's case, like I think it's interesting because we just never really got the third part of that trilogy, And yeah, how does he deal with everything post No Way Home now, right? I think it's slightly likely, like Trevor said. I certainly think it's more likely we get any of these movies. Let me emphasize as strongly as possible. I think it is infinitely more likely that we get any of these movies than anything remotely like it for the Bond series, because I can't be happy in my life. And so,
I mean, it's also Spider-Man No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home made almost $2 billion at the worldwide box office. So, like, I definitely think there have been meetings at Sony to be like, how can we cash in on this? What do we want to do? Do we want to see if we can make stories work? Like, I imagine pre-writers strike, they have, they've got writers with NDAs trying to break the stories. Right,
I think we're like certainly more like the Bond one or the Bond pitch I was talking about, like just lock it, just elbow down for 18 months and like crank out like a trilogy of movies that way, right? Like Lord of the Rings style, just like boom, 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 here are 3 movies, while we, Barbara Broccoli has to fawn over the into the Daniel Craig era for the next 10 years. And so I think that is just not going to happen. And I think we're way more likely to get Spider-Man ones. I think it'd be really cool. I like the idea of like a trilogy enders almost, for lack of a better word. I think it's like a really like cool idea. And like, so many of us and other people talk about like, why can't we do more one-off movies? And like, again, this is maybe one of the few bright sides in my life of being a Bond fan, but like, that's just like such a no-brainer thing. Like, yeah, like we don't need to have you can just do like fun one-off things, and that can be really cool, right? And have that freedom. And so like I would love for them to do that. But yeah, I don't even know where we're at. I mean, I don't even know if they know that. I don't even know if they know if they have Tom Holland anymore or what that looks like. And there's a lot up there. But yeah, I think it would be really cool. And I think Andrew and Toby, they both deserve to go out on a better last note than their respective series did.
Yeah. And I mean, like right now, their last note is No Way Home, which was a better ender for
last, like,
for both
Solo.
things.
I get,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good question, good food for thought. And we'll see, in 5 years' time, if anything of that is coming to fruition.
This is not related to, but since we briefly touched on it, I'm gonna have to bring it back. I like you said, like 5 years from now, kind of thing. On that note, I had this like thought process in my mind of like, I might literally go through all of law school and we still might not have a new Bond movie. And like I was doing the internal math in my head of just like, because like they're obviously not going to announce a new one this year. So best case scenario, end of next year. Then they have to obviously film the thing and like production, all like pre-production, write on it, production, all that kind of stuff. Like, so even if they immediately get the guy in 2024, start filming like spring 2025, it's still not going to come out until like summer, and they only do fall of 2026. And it's just like, that is so, unless they announce someone so soon, it's just like, that is the most disheartening. And like, when I realized that the other day, I was like, fuck, like, what are we doing right now with this series? Every like 5 years have a new thing. Anyway, that's my soapbox for the time being.
Poor Logan.
Let's do rankings, Trevor.
Love, yeah. Let's go ahead and dive into the report card. We grade from A+ to F. We talked extensively here about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Cameron, what do you want to give the film A+ to F? A pensive long sigh for the audio listeners. C- or D-? D-. Ooh, very low. Okay.
D or B?
D as in dog.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah. I almost said F. That's how much.
You really fucking hate Alexi. You really hate the Rhino.
It's not just that. There's like a million things that this film just like little things that just.
We were pretty nice in the.
I mean,
we were very nice to this.
We did kind of completely gloss over the hidden subway car in the Roosevelt station.
Don't even want to bring that up.
That's what I thought about when I thought about like the Lost Vacation, that whole thing.
The weird ass fucking map he puts together, but he also just has like random photos of Gwen.
I'm glad
he's also like written like his own like message about it. Like it's my inner monologue, but on a post-it on a photo of my pseudo ex-girlfriend. I can't. I don't have enough time. We've already been talking for almost 2 hours. Granted, almost an hour of that was
30 minutes that was
talking
for the
about
box
this movie.
office of other movies. Yeah.
Gosh, it's so, there's so many things wrong with this movie on just a microcosm level of just like bad ideas, bad decisions, bad shots, bad story things, bad dialogue, bad, and then like something fun or interesting happens. And it's just like, I just was tired after watching it. I almost said fuck the podcast and just took a nap.
I was like, when you hadn't watched it yesterday, I was bracing for you to be like, hey, I didn't get around to it at work, so sorry, you're on your own.
I was editing podcasts, or not podcasts. I was editing video for work all afternoon outside of like a meeting that I had at 3. So I was basically all day like watching it, but I had to take breaks. This movie, don't even say you could double time this movie like you could with like Quantum Mania and make it through the movie okay. This movie, I had to legitimately take breaks and just be like, it's okay. It can't hurt me anymore. Like this saga of films is over. Just get through this. You just got to get through this one. And then something fun would happen or delightful would happen. And I'm like, I like this.
True.
I like the Harry and Peter hanging out at the pier scene. I think
that's like the one scene they get before everything turns sour.
Everything goes to shit. Yeah.
Although the things that happen sour don't happen for another like 45 minutes, which is another part of this movie. This movie is paced god awfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
This movie almost made it out without us raking it more over the coals. But
Logan, how about you?
D-.
I don't remember what I ranked Spider-Man 3, or what I graded it. But it's a mess, man. It's a mess. But there are those flashes. I think I'm slightly. Even saying slightly warmer is almost giving it too much credit. But I don't hate it as much as Cameron does. I think I can largely just like be like, yeah, it's a very bad movie, but like it's a fun time, right? Andrew Garfield's charming, Emma Stone's charming. It's, there's a lot of pretty lights and flashing colors, and that's nice. I'll probably give it like a D plus. I mean, the thing about it for me is that, and I think I said this last week, I watched the Indian graduation scene like clip into like the little boy scene and then usually stop before the rhino. I watch that like at least a couple times every year. Like I really love that Indian sequence. Like I think it distills like so much like the ethos around like what and who Spider-Man is, and just like being kind of the living manifestation of like hope, right? And having to carry hope and the burden of that and all kind of things about it I really love. But it's just so much movie doesn't work. So I'd probably say a D plus. I have 30 seconds to think about where I'm going to rank it in the final ranking. But I would say a D plus, right? I mean, there are those flashes in the pan that I think work. It's just a movie that has way too much gone on and very little of it works.
Yeah, I think I'm the warmest on this of everybody. I'll go with a C minus for my overall. I absolutely, it has all the problems we've talked about and more. No doubt about it. But at the end of the day, it is still like, there's still a lot of fun here. There's still a lot of Spider-Man here. This is very much to pull from something you often kind of call out there, Logan. This is absolutely a movie I can throw on in the background while I'm doing other stuff and just kind of let it play, and I'd be fine with that. I don't need to. I'm not watching this going in for like a like life altering experience. I will always be happy because I have my Spider-Verse movies now. I'm golden in terms of like what I really want out of a Spider-Man. I still like, like if anything, like this, rewatching these movies, I was like, I should rewatch Tick Tick Boom because Tick Tick Boom was really good.
I had the
Andrew
same
Garfield's
thought.
fucking amazing.
I had the same thought. So good.
And I still every now and then will see like clips from Tick Tick Boom of like
same.
Specifically the like Andrew Garfield, Vanessa Hudgens,
yeah,
the puppetry kind of little sequence and stuff.
I see that on Instagram. I feel like every like few weeks. Yeah, same.
So like Andrew Garfield's really good. Emma Stone's really good. I really like them both. I like that. I like the audacity of killing Gwen Stacy off in the second movie of a presumed trilogy or beyond, because I think that I think if it had been like, oh, they didn't do that and then there was a third movie or something, it would have been like, okay, like we're always just kind of inevitably expecting the death of Gwen Stacy because it's such an iconic kind of storyline that like how much more could they have done the cute flirtatious banter between the two characters. So the fact that they were like, no, we're going to end the Peter Gwen story here, or at least have an ending for that. And again, I think like a potential third movie of dealing with that grief would have been very interesting, and you could have had her continue to pop up in the same way that Captain Stacy pops up a little bit in this movie. And just kind of like looms over whatever Peter did next. Like I liked the potential that this movie kind of left us with, and certainly a lot of it was like, okay, a lot of these aren't ever going to pay off, even if they get a Sinister Six movie off the ground. Like it's not going to be great. They've shown they can't handle that many characters in a movie well, and so the fact that like we're like spared ever having to see those other abominations that they would have inevitably tried to like put together.
That's a good point.
But within this movie, there's still a lot to enjoy. I like even the little bit of banter and stuff about like, I'll come to London with you. They got crime in London. I'll face Jack the Ripper.
Love that.
Like
that's good.
Fun little bit, especially with the like added meta commentary of Andrew Garfield being British. It's like, oh yeah, that would be fun. He could just do a British accent in Oxford or whatever. Obviously never fated to happen, but yeah, there's a lot of charm to this movie hidden amongst the muck. And for as much as Electro and Rhino are in their own completely separate movie, and I would even say Green Goblin is so over the top in his menace and villainy, like the villains are really just like doing their audition stuff for a Sinister Six movie that's a completely different movie than the Amazing Spider-Man that's happening around them. But I find fun, it's weird because I find fun in that campiness compared to the campiness that you guys really liked of the Sam Raimi stuff that didn't click with me. So yeah, I think this one works just better for me than it did for you guys, but all told, it's not
only marginally.
It's not a great movie.
We're at D plus C minus.
Yeah. All right. So diving into our Sinister Six ranking, we now have 3 more villains to add to this one, so we get up to 10 total, because we have Doc Ock in at number 1, Green Goblin at number 2, New Goblin at number 3, Lizard at number 4, Bully Maguire at number 5, Sandman at number 6, and Venom at number 7. We have to add to the list today Rhino, Electro, and Amazing Green Goblin. Rhino, Cam, do you want to just put him even below Venom?
Absolutely.
All right. I'm okay with that.
I didn't even say everything I feel about it. That's how, like, we're not even there.
That's how, yeah. Electro, where do we want to put Electro in this one?
So this is the one where we're going to split the most, I think. Because, again, I like Electro. Electro works less for me than Rhino does, because I think Rhino's just enough of like I was going to say a one-time gag. I guess a two-time gag. That like he's not as like integral to the foundation of the movie.
He's a gag and a callback.
Right. Whereas like Electro is really big. Like I would say if I'll lose I would say I would put Electro below Venom and above Rhino, is what I would say.
Okay, how about you?
My 2 cents.
I put him above Venom. Actually, I might put him above Sandman, because Sandman's just so fucking not even there in that movie sometimes.
That's sort of my thing. Like Sandman is sort of a net neutral and gets like a few moments like it's nice, whereas like Electro to me is just like you're just kind of a negative throughout the experience.
I like Electro from
I like when he's Max.
I
don't
like
when
I
he's
like
Electro.
Max up until halfway through Times Square. I really like that characterization of a Spider-Man fan who gets power.
It's very fascinating, like watching a character like Max in the decades since, where like parasocial relationships have been like a term that has existed.
Yeah,
and it's very much like, oh, that's exactly what he is here. Is
I
like
think that's
really
why I probably am like I will actually put it this way: I'm more favorable towards Max / Electro this time around than I was previously, and I think it's because I get his. It's not like he's a weirdo creepo stalker. It's this is actually like a phenomenon that we have now had well documented. There are concluded as well as currently ongoing studies on parasocial like relationships, and like what driving factors are there around that, and like it's an actual like serious consideration for like mental condition. So as far as like that goes, like I get Max's character a lot more now, since then. But I think that when he becomes after he gets locked up, I'll put it this way: after he gets locked up, he becomes so much less interesting, and a lot less like he just becomes a supervillain at that point. Where before he's kind of just like a guy who had a complex before.
He literally Dr. Manhattan's.
Yeah, literally Dr. Manhattan's, and it's like there's an interesting note there of like, and I like it calls back to Connors in the first film of like, hey, Peter's there trying to be somebody who helps people, and he's not just there to beat somebody up because they have superpowers. It's not finally somebody who I can just wail the shit out of. It's like, hey, you're somebody who needs help. And it continues, and that's one of the things I really, really like about Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And so there's that aspect of it, but in the second half, he's just going around doing electric eel Power Man stuff and going into going to power sockets and coming out, stabbing dudes from behind. He becomes just a non-character at that point. And just as like a cardboard cutout of the villain that now must be stopped. It's very disappointing. But I would put him above Sandman for me.
Yeah, I think ultimately I'd probably fall above Sandman as well, because of the like I find Max as an interesting like character in that like loneliness, creating this fantasy around and like even the moments where like where he does kind of like fantasize about like, you know, choking his thing, and then we snap out of it and we see like, oh no, he didn't actually do any of that kind of stuff, I think are interesting glimpses into like that character. But yeah, I absolutely agree that like he very much becomes just one note, no character villain, so that we don't feel bad about Spider-Man killing him at the end of the film, basically. Because if he was still like a humanizable kind of character, that would be, you know, oh, Peter kills that guy and then loses Gwen, like it's oh, the scales are being balanced or something like that. But yeah, very much here he has a character to start with, whereas like Sandman just had I wanted to help my daughter, and that's basically his only characterization
My daughter.
before he mists away at the end of the film. So yeah, I'm gonna but we'll all keep him below Bully Maguire. So Bully Maguire still in there at number 5, Electro at number 6, Sandman 7, Venom 8, and Rhino at number 9. So where do we want to throw the amazing Green Goblin here as a yeah.
I don't know if I want to place him above or below Electro is kind of where I'm at with him.
For me, I'll kick this one off, I guess. I would put him below Electro, but still probably above Sandman because they do have like at least a scene together where we get to see like, and we get to understand the history of Peter and Harry's kind of relationship with one another. It's very much like it suffers like all of these do of like being way too compact, way too like they don't get nearly enough time to develop into any kind of actual interesting, compelling character, but we do at least get a little bit more to set up the stakes in the relationship. And he, ultimately he is also the one that causes the downfall of Gwen Stacy. So, he's the most villainous in that regard, of impacting Peter Spider-Man's life. So, I think he's still like, I'm still more interested in Electro as a character coming out of this than I am Harry, who's even before we get to see like the bonding, he's very much just playing tropes of, boarding school kid who resents that entire experience, rich kid who resents that entire experience, comes in, basically, starts swinging his dick around and everything, and then just immediately starts suffering from this apparently fatal illness that's, occasionally going to make him just fine.
Yeah, there's that, but it's also a matter of one of the things I really liked is when they meet each other for the first time, Harry's like being standoffish and everything, but eventually it's just Peter's genuine goodness that you can tell as soon as Harry feels that warmth again, he latches onto it very quickly. And I think that speaks to their chemistry. I think Dane DeHaan. I think Dane DeHaan and Andrew Garfield have a very good chemistry, and it's felt in their scene at the harbor/pier. And when it kind of gets brought up, like they're kind of Harry's like, yeah, the whole the model thing, but it shows Peter's been keeping track of where Harry's at in his life, and their friendship might have like gone away, but it is more of like a, hey, we knew each other when we were kids, and you don't know this, but you were super, like, you may not remember, but you were critical to me being okay after my parents died. And your dad died, and now I just want to be there for you in that same way.
Yeah.
And it's that warmth and that light that Harry attaches to that is a little bit at odds. And I think if this had been, we don't have Electro, it's just the Green Goblin story, I think there's a lot more of a dichotomy that then gets to go explore. But we don't get that.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I do think it's below Electro then and above Sandman for me.
Yeah.
Where are you at, Logan?
How about you, Logan?
I don't like Electro or Green Goblin.
That's why they're this low on the list.
But I like Max, and I don't really like Harry.
Okay.
And so while I think that Green Goblin is in my least favorite parts of the movie in a bigger way than Goblin is, there's not really any part of the Harry Goblin dichotomy that I enjoy, versus I like Max. And so I'm also okay saying Electro and then Amazing Goblin.
All right. Cool. Then our ranking of our Sinister now 10. Rhino at number 10, Venom at number 9, Sandman at number 8, Amazing Green Goblin at number 7, Electro at number 6, Bully Maguire at number 5, Lizard at number 4, and then we actually get to good ones.
I was going to say, yeah.
New Goblin at number 3, again, largely because he had 3 movies to build up to that. Green Goblin number 2, the actual good ones, Green Goblin at number 2, and Doc Ock at number 1. Rank the cameos. Once again, Stan Lee in here as graduation guest.
Low.
Yeah, I'm fine. Like he basically has nothing in this.
It's bottom for me. Like worst one.
Yeah, at least
compared to the first one. Oh man.
I mean,
yeah.
It's definitely a dip down from School Librarian, and I think I would absolutely put it below all of the Sam Raimi ones, because at least in those he's like in the first 2 movies he's actively being a like everyday hero and just like helping people from debris and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then at least in Spider-Man 3 he has that like line to Peter about like
I guess one person really can make a difference.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Being the man in Times Square. So graduation guest, is basically just a nothing thing for him here.
Yeah.
And now we dive into our overall rankings on where this goes in our Sony Spider-Man rankings. Spider-Man 2, number 1, at number 2, the original Spider-Man film. Number 3, The Amazing Spider-Man, and number 4, Spider-Man 3. So where do we want it? I think we're all I think this all comes down to does this where does this fall above or below Spider-Man 3? I don't think it
Yeah,
I don't think any of us would say that it surpasses Amazing Spider-Man. So does the fact that this like suffers the exact same crime?
I know that's like the thing. It's like the exact
Spider-Man 3. How does that do in relationship?
There's a game called Kill Your Baby, which is like you eliminate all your out of all your favorite things to find your.
I know, right?
I don't know how. Like this is like the inverse. Like how do I murder both of these things?
I can only kill one.
I can only kill one. It's like you have a pistol. It's you and this person in a room, or it's between these two people in the room. You have one bullet, and you just like shoot yourself.
You stand next to them and you shoot yourself, so you shoot you both.
Yeah, it's like the Dwight line from The Office. Yeah,
whatever the saying is, I don't. This is honestly the hardest ranking I've ever had to be asked how to rank.
Trevor's comment there just reminded me of the Office scene where Michael's like, if I had 3 bullets and I had like Bin Laden, Hitler, and Toby, I'd shoot Toby 3 times. It was like it's like that.
I thought of that as well.
No, I mean, for me, ultimately, I think it has, as we've talked about, a lot of the same issues as Spider-Man 3. It really, I mean, in a lot of ways, it comes down to just like your personal preference between the two, right? Which is, Trevor, I assume, will have this ahead of Spider-Man 3. For me, it sort of almost works in the inverse order, where Spider-Man 3 may or may not be a better movie than this. That is a matter for debate. But I think it came off of a significantly stronger movie than Amazing Spider-Man, right? Like, we all agreed that Spider-Man 2 is better than Amazing Spider-Man 1. And just, certainly in terms of, like, the pop culture impact alone. And so I think the expectations for Spider-Man 3 being so high, and the fact that while this movie is not good, Peter's not really one of the issues in that. Versus in Spider-Man 3, I genuinely think they just like totally misunderstand who that character is. Like, it's even before he's Venom, he's doing weird shit like kissing Gwen in front of Mary Jane, which is something that like the Peter in the first movies would never do, right? It's like they just didn't even have like the same character almost, and they didn't understand it. That I would put this at 4 and Spider-Man 3 at 5. That's what I would say. Because and also because like I wanted it more, right?
Well, then I'll save you from the stress of the ranking, Cameron.
I actually agree with Logan.
Because
Thank you.
Again, given my bigger affinity to
Trevor was the easy one. It was me and Cameron were gonna be the two that had to actually make it. Yeah.
But I mean, it did. Like I will say the thing that like almost has me put this below Spider-Man 3 is the fact that they should have fucking known better. And they did the exact same mistake. 7 years to make the exact same mistake.
Yeah.
When was that? When was Spider-Man 3? Yeah.
07, right?
Yeah, 07. So yeah, 7 years later, and they've just repeated history. That
and arguably done it worse, right?
With the exact same people at the helm, they just made the exact same mistakes again, and it bit them. Like Spider-Man 3, they probably thought, well, the critics don't like it, but it still made us buttloads of money because people showed up, and so they were like, they thought they were invincible. They thought they could do it again, and they couldn't. And so,
gosh, actually, does that make it worse? Because you also have the hubris of we're going to launch a cinematic universe on the back of this not well.
I mean, they both kill a series. Both Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 kill the future of their respective versions. Amazing Spider-Man 2 just does it that much quicker. They flew too far, too fast, all that stuff. But yeah, I think ultimately. I still put it above.
I think my reasoning was
I think you're right. I think you're both right. I agree with you on that. It's just like there's just because here's the thing. I think about like the few redeeming things about Spider-Man 3, and then I think about
there's nothing.
Like the quantity of like redeemable things about Amazing Spider-Man 2. Does not help the bones are good. in one, bones are bad in the other. I guess it's kind of the inverse. Like the bones in Spider-Man 3 are really bad. Like structurally, Peter is not the same character. Like there's a lot going through that I think just like as a through line is just like bad structure. But then there's a lot of fun set dressing on top of it, right? They doll it up. No. They doll up this ugly film pretty well. And on the inverse, I think there's a lot of strong structural bone stuff. Some interesting character, like possible character development if they had more time to flesh it out. Like a lot of things that could have been a lot better. And then they just compress it into what were originally strong bones into a pile of dog shit. And so it's a pile of dog shit that looks nice, or a pile of dog shit that I know shouldn't have been a pile of dog shit.
All right. So I definitely I zoned out for some of that, as I just thought, going back to the pitch of Spider-Man 4, I'm going to, just make an addendum to my middle-aged Tobey Maguire, what that's like. Bring back Sam Raimi and bring back that original pitch of Bruce Campbell has been Mysterio the whole time. And
that's rad.
That actually would have been awesome.
Kick off the movie with
old-ass Bruce Campbell?
No, kick off the movie with do the de-aging tech that everybody loves to do these days of a montage of all of the other cameos and that we never saw in between of just Bruce Campbell running into Tobey Maguire at various events in his life.
I love that, actually.
Obviously because he was the ring announcer, he was the maitre d', he was the usher. Just have him do 6 or 7 more of those as an opening montage, and then modern day Bruce Campbell as the villain Mysterio.
Oh my God,
that's rad.
I
love that, actually.
Really
I love
amazing,
that,
though, is if also the ring announcer is shown to have been part of, it was actually a trio of criminals, with Mysterio being the ringleader, and then it all spiraling out of control.
Retconning again, who killed Uncle Ben.
He was the ringleader that led Sandman and the other guy to kill Uncle Ben.
But what's really the kicker about it is basically he's been following Peter to slowly try to sabotage his life in minor ways, as a way of not because I'm really upset about it, but because fuck you for not stopping him. Just turn it on Peter or something. I don't know. I didn't well think that out. All I know is it would really funny for it to be for Mysterio to be revealed that it's Bruce Campbell, and Peter just being wait, and the flashback you mentioned montage of all the times he's fucked with them over the years.
Yeah, I think in the middle of your pitch, you turned Bruce Campbell from being a ringleader that was working with Sandman and the carjacker to a guy who was working with the promoter who shorted
the master of your pain,
from
Spectre and Blofeld.
He switched sides as it was developing in my head. That's on me.
Yeah.
But still, that would be fascinating. That would be absolutely fascinating. I'd love to see that.
I love that idea too. I love that idea too because it reminds me of. Neither one of you, I assume, watched the Jim Gaffigan show, which is fair enough. It was good. I enjoyed it. But in the first season of the Jim Gaffigan show, there's a recurrent arc that is this. It is Macaulay Culkin keeps popping up.
I've seen this.
It's just random things as a barista, as a DJ, as all these are characters for the first 9 episodes. And everyone around Jim Gaffigan doesn't seem to notice, and only Jim is is that are you? And then it culminates with the 10th episode, it's basically a parody of It's a Wonderful Life, and Macaulay Culkin is his fairy godmother. And it's incredible, and it's such a because the quick cameos are 30 seconds long, right? The longest one is a minute and a half up until the last episode, until you can very much blink and you miss him kind of thing. And so to get that payoff, I love it the same way, being and we're going to do it for a major motion picture Spider-Man movie now, as well as Chef's Kiss Me.
Yeah. Anyway, extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. Disney Plus finally triggered their algorithm to be hey, we should promote the most recent thing in the Marvel stuff that we've done. So Secret Invasion is now the first plug that they have on the page, followed by the usual suspects that we've had over the run.
The usual suspects.
The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man 3, 2, and 1, Spider-Man Homecoming, Fan Four Stick from 2015, and X-Men Dark Phoenix. X-Men Apocalypse was what basically got kicked out by the addition of Secret Invasion here.
As it should. That movie fucking sucks.
I mean,
is Dark Phoenix the last X movie?
Oh wait, no, Dark Phoenix. Oh, never mind.
Dark Phoenix was the
worse.
last one. Yeah,
Okay.
X-Men Apocalypse was the one before that. It was
that's what I thought.
X-Men First Class, Days of Future Past,
Days of Future
Apocalypse,
Past.
and then Dark Phoenix.
Those films do not.
What a
end.
nosedive.
Oh yeah, what an
Yeah.
absolute off the fucking cliff.
Those first two though.
X-Men Dark Phoenix,
Ooh.
I've still never bothered to see.
Real good.
So that
I haven't seen it either.
it's
Oh
definitely-
shit! You know what? I haven't seen it either. I
Yeah.
just know
Nobody did.
nobody did. I think everybody just inherently knew this is gonna be fucking bad.
Yeah.
Who was
It was also
Jean Grey?
Sophie Turner.
That's Sophie Turner.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sophie Turner wasn't like a bad Jean Grey. It was just these movies
No,
were bad.
it was
Yeah.
not her
It was
fault.
like
Yeah.
it was
casting was
the
never-
movies were bad.
Yeah.
It finally came out
Yeah.
post Fox deal, so it was
Yeah.
very, like Disney wasn't even really behind it.
Yeah.
But still had to release it to try and like recoup some of their purchase.
Hundreds of
Because
millions
say
of
what
dollars.
you
Yeah.
want, they're
I mean-
not as bad as the HBO Max.
I was gonna say,
president.
yeah, they could have like I think I would venture a guess to say that if the deal happened now, they would have Batgirled it and they would have been like,
Oh,
this
yeah.
doesn't need to see the
Wow,
light of day.
yeah.
We'll just take the write off.
Hmm.
So yeah, be interesting. Anyway, extracurriculars. Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus? I imagine it's largely just Cam and I watching all of the Ahsoka stuff.
Yep.
How about you, Logan? Watching anything out there? Nope.
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
Well, that
Watching
is
King of
good.
the Queens on Peacock, if that counts.
Oh, Logan's been Cameron's been watching I keep seeing him watch an American Gladiators docuseries.
Oh, nice. What is
on
that
Netflix,
on?
on
yeah.
Netflix? Yeah.
I
On
started it
Netflix, nice.
because so I picked up Netflix again to watch One Piece. Watched all of it, really good. Then I was just like, I wanted to watch Ahsoka, but the D Plus app on my PS4 Pro that I have out in the living room, like wasn't working. And so I said, okay. So I went back to Netflix, and like the first thing it suggested was American Gladiators. Like, I can't remember that
Oh, yeah.
show. And I checked it out,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like it's been pretty dang good. So
Yeah.
I've watched a couple times over the last week or two Across the Spider-Verse, which is out now. I got my copy of that, so continuing on with the spider stuff. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. As I said, we'll be back next week with Elemental. But thank you, everybody, for joining me to talk about The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Despite the flaws in the movie, very fun conversation, enjoying. These ones do tend to be some of my favorites of like, there are glimmers of something there, but also let's talk about all the bad things in these movies.
Yeah.
Because you
because you can see my trigger just be switched.
apparently, yeah. I definitely like. I almost want to watch Jungle Cruise with you now, just to see if it's a Paul Giamatti doing crazy over the top accent thing that you struggle with.
Oh wow, maybe
The Emily Blunt.
yeah, it's
Dwayne
Emily
Johnson?
Blunt, Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
actually
haven't
want to
seen
watch
it
it too.
yet, so yeah, maybe.
I think we did a That D Plus show on it. I think.
But we can do another one.
Oh, super early on we did. I wasn't on it, but you had somebody else on it. It was a
Yeah.
guest.
Frank, maybe.
Might have been me. It might have been a solo with me, but it might have also been Frank. I'd have to check. Anyway, or maybe we never actually did it. Maybe we talked about doing it for a while and then just didn't. I'll have to go. I'll have to dig into that. We've done so many of these. We're at like 186 episodes. I think there's 187 for both this and now That Nerdy Site Show are basically like synced up again because of like the pauses and the breaks. So yeah, almost we're nearing 200 episodes of both podcasts. So crazy stuff the last few years.
Plus 100 of
Plus 100
News You
of
Care About.
That News You Care About. Yep. Plus 26 That Bond shows.
Yeah.
And even there are more That Nerdy Site shows because back when we were doing Patreon stuff, we had like bonus monthly
Yeah,
episodes
that's
as
true.
well. So yeah, we're easily up over 200 actual episodes of That Nerdy Site show.
Podcast, and then
but
on
yes.
top of that, Let's Plays and
Yeah,
special
yes.
features and all other sorts of
Oh
stuff.
yeah, I'm probably nearing like 1,000 videos on the That Nerdy Site YouTube channel that have me in them in some way or another. Yeah.
Are we over 1,000 videos total?
I mean, probably with like, especially like a few years of Let's Plays every Tuesday and Thursday. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. I'd have to check the stuff, or you can check it while I do the outro. But you can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. Anything you want to shout out there, Logan?
Hey, go check out the 1,000 videos.
We have over 1,000 videos.
There we go.
There you go.
If you want a content sink, like if the pandemic happened again, let me tell you, you have a plethora of content on that nerdy site. YouTube.com/that nerdy site.
Plus all the written stuff too.
Yeah. You follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to? Any specific things you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
What's that supposed to mean?
Because Logan was just like, watch any of the 1,000 videos.
Oh yeah, okay. I was like,
so is there anything in particular?
I thought it was like a
macro.
snide comment.
Yeah.
Like, what did I do? Like,
No, I went really macro. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. I still have more PAX West content coming out.
Yeah.
I have not been uploading it recently because over like the last 3 days because I keep forgetting to. Mostly just because like I'm tired after.
You're
working.
honest at least, right?
And
yeah,
honestly, also I'm editing a lot of videos for work, and so sometimes I forget if I edited anything, whether it's for work or for that nerdy site right now. So.
Oh, I had to do some stuff with like Adobe Acrobat for work yesterday, and it was just like a pain in the ass getting the right version of Acrobat to download because like it was still opening as Acrobat Reader. I was like, I need Acrobat Pro, and I was like, God damn it, I don't want to deal with Adobe in my day-to-day job. I already have to deal with them a little bit in like podcast world. This is frustrating.
Yeah,
so
I use DaVinci for like our personal stuff for the most part, but like honestly, I've gotten to a point where I'm so used to both programs' tools that I go to do something on one of them and realize, oh, that's not part of the tool set that this program has.
Mm-hmm.
And it's killing me because there's so many things I want to do to make this just editing easier. And they just both are just lacking entire like sections of a suite of tools. And it's just so goddamn annoying.
Well, there you go. And we've gotten so mad at venting about Amazing Spider-Man. We're venting about Adobe Photoshop now.
Yeah.
Yes, go check out Cameron's PAX videos whenever they're getting uploaded. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will shout out my ongoing Baldur's Gate 3 series of Let's Plays Tuesdays and Thursdays. As of today, I believe we're nearing the end of Act 1 in the grand scheme of the Let's Play series stuff. So
you are. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I think today's episode was basically doing the Kresh. So I think the next episode that'll go up next week is basically heading into Act 2. So yeah, check out all that fun stuff, and or check out me and Cameron talking for almost 3 hours about Baldur's Gate 3 in this past week's That Nerdy Site show, where we did a big old epic spoiler cast on the game. And I like. In the week since, I've been doing a lot more with like my Dark Urge playthrough and could have talked a lot more about that stuff too. So I'm sure I still have plenty to say about the game before year end. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and thwip thwip.